Welcome to Profits and Process. I'm your host, Ryan Grant. And this episode is a little different from the norm. I created this idea or came up with this idea for this podcast during the pandemic when people were going through an abrupt severance, a severance of engagement, a severance of process, and the world had basically stopped. And when I decided I wanted to do this, I was able to actually sit down with some individuals. And of course, some of those individuals were family members. Never have I had better conversations with someone other than my brother. And to be able to sit down with him and talk about process and just kind of engage in the things that we engage in conversationally, it was beautiful. Fast forward to 2 years later, and for people that don't have context, the reason why I'm showing this podcast, why my brother is the showcase of this early episode is because this month, May 5th to be exact, marks the, I guess you could say, anniversary or year-long cycle of my brother's death. And talk about a process. And this process of walking with that experience for an entire year has been interesting and lovely and fascinating and all the feels. So I think it would be only fitting to have this week be in honor of my brother and also still true to what we're trying to accomplish in these conversations of process. Welcome and thank you. And this is my brother Netic, an individual that is really not one for labels, cannot be put in a box. And to do that would only limit him. He is me, I am him. Once again, I know you'll enjoy, so relax and take notes.
Yo, shit, like not having.
She was like, I thought there was gonna be like a
Slate. You gotta buy you a slate. Finally grow
Tell
up.
me, my brother, about all the pork you've been eating for the last.
my brother.
Yeah, about all that pork, that swine that you've been dining on.
Swine eater.
No, so literally, of course, like I said, this is probably the least prepared I've been for these podcasts, and
I mean, in all fairness, when anyone's talking to me, they're the least prepared they've been.
there you go. But also, I'm like speaking to myself, to just an upgraded version in many ways of myself. So it's always fun talking to you, and ridiculous, and
Yeah.
insightful,
You know,
and all that.
My mom said before we left, she said, she's like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in trouble. And I was like, well, I know who I'm talking to, and by the looks of it, we're gonna be in trouble. But it's fun because you're probably one of the only people that I actually don't have to talk to about almost anything, really, because we're so congruent and see eye to eye on so many things that it's almost. I mean, we're talking just to like get it out and get these things out and be reconfirmed and sort of in this feedback loop. But
it's like a lot of it's like just an enjoyment of like just bouncing.
And also not feeling as crazy or not feeling as alone because.
No, absolutely, because we are.
Yeah, because
because
even to our loved ones, we're still the extreme.
So yeah, it's like a sharing of thoughts, and I said especially I think for like as of recently, I've been doing a lot of that with you, with all like I'm having these ideas and like these notes, and I'm like, yo, man, I was, and yes, they are usually when I'm high to some degree, but
higher,
brother,
my brother.
Yeah, then where I'm already at this. So many people are always asking about us and about my brother and who he is, and trying to, in the capacity, trying to figure out. No, really trying to figure out. And that's your brother. And it's funny because people, without meeting you, they always reference me, and I'm the extreme to them. And it's like, just wait, just wait. But I also think that I've been able to give people perspective on your perspective, and it's like I'm able to articulate your stance from a non-emotional space that people are not able to receive being in your space, so they can actually get who you are by the way I explain it, because I'm not who you are. And It's like, but I do understand who you are because in the capacity that I am you.
Right.
So we just confused everybody. Speaking to you.
No, yeah, that's real for me as well, in terms of recognizing that I try to start off where I think you are in conversations, or with this level of space and detachment. And after a while of like having the same, maybe having the same conversation or trying to go to a particular place with individuals, I'm like starting to start losing it. I start losing that.
Yeah, remember we had talked about, I remember we had this conversation one time, is that usually in conversation or idea, we might start from two different angles, but we're always going to get to the same.
Yeah.
One time we had said that you start off giving people a D, I start off giving people an A, and they always end right the same. I don't even know. I don't even know.
I was like an F.
Yeah, I'm about to say probably an F, and they might end up at C if they're lucky. Chances are, my drop is real heavy. Yeah.
I'm well, also, it's funny. It gives me. I think you probably actually interact. Well, at this point, we kind of all interact with less people.
Yeah.
But I have like a lot of sort of individuals in a, sort of my life in a sort of, I don't want to say revolving door, but it's just like I have like this open door sort of policy in my world and in my life where you're in and almost anyone can be in, and you're
for as long as they
so as long as they like hold it together and not get on my fucking nerves, or I don't get on their nerves. But so I have there's like a lot of interaction, a lot of connection with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life.
I try to mitigate that.
Yeah.
Because I know that at some point in time it's all limited, and I've voiced before that my like really tight connections are from those people who've chosen to stick around through like it's like I know that all my really tight friends, they chose to be friends because I know it wasn't easy. I know that they had to actually see the value, and it's usually through something physical. Those that have really stuck around, but it takes time because I'm not the type of person that I don't actually, I don't prioritize. I don't want to say I don't value, but I don't prioritize most of the things that most people prioritize in the moment. I think we've always been for people interesting like baselines and interesting foundations for others. You know what I mean? More of the time we're the foundation for them than they are for us.
Oh yeah.
And in perspective of like relationships as well, friendships, I've always gotten people like, well, how come you don't really talk to me about this? Like, how come you don't reach
share,
out?
Right?
Yeah,
you're not my confidant.
Reach out to this? And I say, like I don't really. I share everything with you. I do. I'm like, well, I don't really need that. Like, I just don't really have that desire to, I share what I feel, and I'm like, wow. In what reference point we need people versus them needing us has always been a very different space.
I mean, that really just comes from what you have in your toolbox, and not that you necessarily have answers for individuals, but you might have, foundationally, you probably have a lot more in your toolbox from the worlds that you walk through, and we've been blessed. I think Seven one time said to me, she's like, you're like a she's like, you were born with like the spiritual silver spoon in your mouth. And it's like, absolutely. we have a fucking like, we have like this spiritual trust fund kids. We're really, and I use that term spiritual very lightly, but like the world that we grew up in was very much about that, right? But yeah, it is a reference point for people, and so we really are that, right? Like we came from that shit. So there's a lot of what we experience and what we witness other people sort of like growing through, and we're looking at them like, yeah, okay, I see, in the same way we always say like everyone's in this like born again Christian without the Christian vibe. It's like, okay, so now you're on your crystal, so you're this born again crystal vibe now, and you're and now you're super hype, and you got to give me all your crystals, and
judging that I don't have crystals.
Yeah, and I don't have crystals, and like I'm like, okay, cool, like I want to see you in let me see you in 4 or 5 years, and, you learning about magic and tarot cards? Oh, that's dope. Congratulations. That's sick. Oh, you going to tell me about that shit? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, like you want me to join? And I'm, it just gets to that point where you're like, everybody knows that idea of like that born again Christian, like as soon as they become Christian, and they're just like pushing it on you and pumping it on you and want you to come to church with them, and you got to, they got to save you because they've been saved. But they don't recognize it in the spaces that they're in, exactly. So it's like, oh, now all of a sudden they talking about tribe, and you're like, oh, wait, you want to talk? Like my man, right? Like what Troy Healthnut when he did that. When he had
it's funny because I think that like
you're talking about spirit medicine. We're gonna tell you we should really stick with some plant medicine. He's talking to like Native Americans in their home, and they're looking at it like
what? This is and I think that it's funny because we can definitely specifically to you. You get it even more because you engage. And I always say to you, like, okay, you're engaging again.
Yeah.
Or you're talking.
Oh, you're gonna talk.
You're talking to people. You're gonna, I've always say that you put yourself in a lot of situations because of you being such a social person. I think that you really do. You really are. And people used to always, you don't care. And I'm like, no, he actually cares more. And so his frustration and around it is because he does care. And
I really do like people.
No, I know.
I'm disappointed more often as a result of how much I like people, but like I just have like a really high hope.
Yeah. And it's
for people and for us.
And I think that it's funny because people really don't know. Of course, part of the reason why I'm able to speak on your behalf is because I feel like I have a somewhat of the best understanding of who you are and who you've been, and watched you from a very close proximity. And so even when people in my ability to call you out or say certain things, like I know where people might want to say something and stand their ground, but they're scared, they're fearful of you destroying them in conversation or how you're going to address them. I'm like, I don't really care. It's like, so what? Like, but you know that this is this. And with that, I've watched so many people, and I just explained it the other day this to one of our friends, that I've watched everyone from our family members to strangers to friends get in conversations with you. And it's like, they forget who they're talking to, and they forget what you've done, and almost like they forget
or don't know,
or they don't know your credentials. And when I mean by credentials, I don't mean schooling credentials, but you know that by any means. What I mean is that really the actual work that you've done. This whole thing in regards to process. You're a phenomenal example because you have forever as long as I've known you, which is just a little bit of time, and I've been in your space. I've watched you literally do more than what people were. And before people even knew that it was a thing. So it's like you've always been ahead of the curve, which and historically people that are ahead of the curve are never going to be valued in that regard.
They're the first ones to take the arrows.
And I think that that's part of the frustration. I think at some point in time you dance between like being frustrated with that because it's like, oh, nobody gets that this is the shit. And it's like, okay, but there has to be a downside force, and that's part of your process, and that's part of your process in regards to you choosing to step into those realms, and you choosing that because your desire to know is really going to be like, okay, well then I'm gonna know more than, and I'm not gonna be connected from that aspect. Like, yes, you'll be able to, like, what is that phrase of like reap the benefits and enjoy but you're not enjoying it. It's not really for yourself. You enjoy the aspect of like, yo, I get it. And now being able to pass it on to people, you know, you've always done that from literally everything. It's like you are, a lot of the times you are the catalyst for so much thought, design, movement, frustration, anything, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And yeah, it comes with a lot. Like there's just as much the value in it. Doesn't mean that it's not painful. It doesn't mean that it's isolated. You know what I mean? It does.
Yeah, the growing pain. I mean, I think the growing pains of doing anything, and you know, and I think it's like one of those double-edged swords where you feel comfortable and confident in your ability to do.
Yeah.
And then in the process of doing, it's usually lonely. You know, and that process is lonely. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to, you know, I know for sure that's why me and Hugo, you know, my other family member, was able to connect and dig in and go through, because normally he's doing that same thing as well, right? So he's in his creative endeavors, he's by himself and lonely with a level of seriousness.
Yeah.
So we were able to sort of like come together and work individually, but in the presence of each other, you know. And it's also it's also been a problem in terms of, or you know, it's a gift and a curse, but it's also part of my desires of a relationship and in a relationship and I've always been open in saying this, like, I want to be exactly who I am by myself in the presence of another.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm constantly seeking this ability to just be who I am, but I know that a lot of times being who I am means that I have to be alone.
You see the value in being who you are and what comes along with that, but in the same breath, it's like, but I do desire to not be alone. Like there are moments with that.
Right.
So,
I mean, I know it's super frustrating for anyone that spent any time with, you know, like.
What do you mean? I get it. Like I said, because I might be just a little less. I totally understand it, and I also understand, and I do. I think personally, you know, for children, the capacity of children and the expression of another being that you see as yourself, but it's not yourself. That also.
Right.
You want to protect, you want to have these things for, but they have their own idea that they can literally say no to. They can everything that I have an idea of, they can literally just say, nah, I don't want that. And in a relationship, there are aspects of, it's like, oh, I enjoy sharing space with you, and I want to share space, and then it's like, but I don't really want to give up the aspects about me that I really like, but some of that, you know, when dealing with somebody else in regards to making decisions or certain things, it's like, oh man, all that stuff really, really plays a part. I think that for most people, they don't really know actually the details of your experience growing up, like watching your story. And I just want to speak a little bit to that. First of all, this notion, if you look at like the things that are really heavy hitters for people right now, diet, lifestyle, you know, with social justice and all that, and you know, the economic system that we're in. You've been our family anarchist from day one. You've been the leader of the diet culture in our family for the most part. You can speak on that. When did you become vegan?
I think I was, I went vegan at like 15 or 16, maybe 16. I don't know. There was nobody vegan. I couldn't eat like food at lunchtime. It was crazy.
Yeah, which is wild. So you're talking over 20 years ago, and it's just a very different conversation. First of all, we did find out that Dad back in the day, Dad was vegan.
Dad was vegan. Dad was microbiotic and macrobiotic. He went macrobiotic, then microbiotic. He was vegan
before the way back in the day.
Dad yoga,
all that shit. But yeah, like what was that? The conversation, like I remember you doing that, and I remember that being a thing in our household, and Mom having to make and Dear having to make different dishes for all of us because I ate nothing, but I was eating. You know what I mean? Like I was picky with my food, but I was eating stuff, and I remember laughing like, "Oh, you guys are like, this is ridiculous!" Like, "Oh," and
well, I think it starts. I think even before the whole vegan thing, I think what's important is to sort of understand like our journey and our connection. Obviously, you know, we had what we were just talking about, Dad, in terms of his diet and how he sort of, you know, Dad was sort of testing the waters and metabolically he was.
Dad's methodology was really interesting, just in regards to like just everything he did. He was really testing himself and testing. And it was all around his body and his mind, but it was like fear-based because he you know what I mean. He's like scared. You know what I mean. So he
he had a devastating injury.
He wanted to make himself
and then wanted to make himself sort of like unbreakable in the capacity that he could, and then that carried over in his kids and wanting to make his children unbreakable, anti-fragile, if you will. But that combination with Dad and his real intense sort of path and journey and methodology to his metabolic experience, where he's, really focused on the physical.
Yeah.
Being, his physical experience.
His process was
it's phenomenal. Yeah. He's amazing. But then also having Mom, who's like the esoteric, creative artist, spiritualist side, which is completely different. And when you talk and you think about that interaction between the two of them and their existence, and the fact that they found each other, created you and I, and couldn't really sustain each other in any sort of way, because they came together basically to have us.
But both of them honored the value in each other.
Right? No, they knew it.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Like they did not beef. They didn't. They beefed with each other in terms of each other,
but not about.
But never about us and how and what each other was giving each other, which was. Like Mom never got in Dad's way.
With what
no matter how hard he pushed us or tried to break us, she never got in the way. Like she just never was like, it's too much, Vince. She never like.
There was never
but he's just a baby. She's like, no. Wherever he wanted to go with us, physically, she was like, yeah. And wherever she wanted to go. With us spiritually and metaphysically, he knew, and he openly talks about that. I don't know if you've had this conversation. You need to have him on.
I speak to it as
But he's openly talked about that to me, about knowing that Mom, that he needed his children to have what Mom had because he didn't have that.
Yeah. No, and
he was very clear. I'm filling a deficit,
Mom, and part of it was around like. Family, everything he's family.
Tribe.
And he knew that, absolutely. And he knew that if he died, it was around like his fragility and his mortality. It was like, if I died, I knew my family would be good. My children would be good.
Yeah.
From all, like health, from a physical aspect, they worked out. Like
he wanted in that tribe.
And
he told me, he said absolutely. That as well.
And like, I look at it as like Mom was building the foundation for us, spirit-wise, resonate. So she helped us find what resonates with our spirit, and that was it. She built that foundation for us in love and everything like that. Dad was upgrade mode. And Dad was around like doing everything he could to take that spirit and now develop it and build upon it and build awareness in that. And of course, clearly we see value in that, and we continue to build on it.
I think that was, for me, that's part of the importance of like my development and my growth, is around this fact that I had these two individuals, and I also had this space. Mom gave there was a lot of space, right? Like I spent a lot of time by myself, even like in the woods by myself. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time, even when I was like,
she was quote unquote like, for reference point, like a lot freer with you, based upon who you were.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dad, too. Dad would always say, like, I would worry about Ryan far more than I would worry about you, which allowed me to, explore more things, get in more trouble, do more. Like, I
gave more reason to worry more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, it was like, I don't know. It was also, I mean, you also weren't, maybe you just didn't, it was like you were focused in the ways that you were focused that allowed you.
Yeah, that's just very different. So, in the aspects of, I know what you mean. We've always been, very focused, laser-like at one task, and you have been phenomenally talented at all tasks. But with that, you dance around.
Yeah, I'm like, what's this? I can do that.
Yeah. And then you're like, and it's not even a matter of trying to see how far you can do it. It's more a matter of like, I can do it. And then whatever point, and to you, we talk about this, like, sometimes you can see while you're doing it, it's like, but you're always looking for whatever feels like the best as opposed to develop, you know what I mean? Like to just develop this and take it as far as you can. It's like, well, what's the next best thing? Okay, cool. I know I'm good at that, and I know I can do it. Like, now let me see that.
I think there's a feeling that I have when I'm like, okay, I actually know like that when there's a formula that if I do this a certain number of times.
Once you've reverse engineered something?
Yeah.
To some degree?
Reverse engineered it, but ultimately it's like a lot of people need to get to a particular place in something to feel achieved. Mm-hmm. And for me, and I understand that, but I have this idea that for me, a lot of times it's a receipt for the process. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this with art, with Hugo, all the time. I sort of told Hugo, like, I see this art on the wall as a receipt. It's proof of time under pressure, of work that you did.
No, absolutely.
But the art itself is like whatever. Who gives a shit? Because you're actually selling it and getting rid of it to afford more time to do this thing again, to create another receipt, and then you're selling a receipt. Yeah. And it's like, but the art itself that you made, that's not art. Like, that is a product of art, right? The art is the process.
Art is the process. That's it, dude.
Right? So
the art is the process.
Art is the process. So for me, a lot of times I'm in the process, and once I understand that, I know how to do this process. So if I have to repeat this process over and over and over again to get a receipt, I don't give a fuck about a receipt.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't give a fuck about selling a receipt to anybody or being recognized as anybody like that for the fact that, oh, wow, you could do this because you made it. I'm like, once I know how to do it and I know that I can do it, I'm like, wait, I'm going to repeat the same thing over and over again to show you that I can do it?
Yeah.
I know that I can do it. And it's very difficult for me because a lot of times I'm like, I'm actually satisfied in knowing that I can.
Yeah. No, I think that I understand it. I think, and I know I've understood because I've seen it so much over and over and over again in you. And it's like, it's like somebody, when you walk into it with an expectation and you're like, based upon a performance, you expect them to desire something else. And it's like, no, don't do that with my brother. Don't do that.
Right.
So, because in that, it's like, well, he can. And I'm like, so what? Yeah, that's the point. I was like, once my brother recognizes he can, and what the can looks like, it's to him. It might be 2 years, 6 months, 3 weeks, 10 months, 10 weeks. It might be whatever. I was like, there's a real high intensity. And I was like, yo, I said before, and I was even with Mom, I said, Kien's wild religious. And I was like, he's just religious in thought and whatever. You can tell whatever his religion is in the moment. He talks about it, he's in it, whatever, and then it might change. And I said, but he's studied so many religions. Studied so many different religions. I said, the religious aspect is not the big. I said, the spiritual, because he's just finding the spirituality in everything. I said, literally in everything. And it's phenomenal in regards, and I value it so much. Sometimes it hurts. Not hurts. Sometimes it's a little frustrating when it comes to combining or doing something, because if you do,
it's frustrating to me. I drive myself crazy.
Yeah. But it's really fascinating because I think that your mind does work like so many of the great minds that we value, that we actually look at in history, and that people are study this person, blah 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 blah. And I almost want to see I'm always talking about I want that second, third character. Who's the extra who's the buddy of the guy of Tesla? Who's Tesla's right hand man or his second friend? I was like, it was wild frustrating to be says I want to hear those perspectives, because I know that there's real value in that, and there's no way that these dudes that we value didn't frustrate everybody around them in the moment, and that's, because we talk about awareness and stance, and we were just saying I find value in awareness, because awareness makes it, usually when people are aware is when they're uncomfortable, because they're like, oh man, why? They're trying to figure out what's going on, and with that, it's you have the ability to grow, to change, to create something else.
Yeah, that's actually a brainwashing technique, is to create hyperstimulation in order, brainwashing. To create hyperstimulation or a hyperstimulated negative environment, and then while that person is under duress, give them an idea. And of course, also, if you're in the esoteric tradition of dark magics, that's also where this whole idea of this adrenochrome and abuse of children comes from like blood magic, sex magic, blood and sex magic being like the two highest pillars of magic that exists, because on the physical.
Yeah.
Because blood and sex is what keeps the physical.
Yeah, absolutely.
In our, keeps the physical going. So that's the highest sort of like areas that you can go. And if you're willing to go if you want the darkest, like the highest power, create
the quote unquote like pain.
Right. Create pain out of the most innocence, right? Like take blood from the innocent, take these sort of ideas are born out of that, right? Like, and this isn't something that's like new in the world. This is, you know, the Aztecs or Mayans. I think it was the Aztecs that I think we talked about like 80. I think they just did like a blood sacrifice of like 80,000 people over like the course of like a weekend, supposedly. And because that's blood magic. Why these empires grow so large is because they're practicing blood magic on such a high level. And it doesn't have to be like magic in the way that you think about magic. It's like how many people are suffering, how many people are bleeding in a society. And if you look at like how societies grow and where sort of like disproportionate growth areas come, you start seeing like, oh, there's a lot of bloodletting, there's a lot of bleeding, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of and on the other side of that, there's the balance of like, and because of that, there's a lot of prosperity, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of wealth.
Yeah, you can take it in from a scientific, like chemically what that does. You know, what's produced chemically during
fear
and suffering and all that, and energetically, you know,
it's just as basic as like being in sort of like a, you know, when they're training with gas masks and you know they pull your gas mask off and they're yelling orders at you while you're breathing in
stress,
fucking fumes under stress.
And I think
under duress.
Those are really really interesting. And this is what we do. We find the connection between everything. And it's like, yeah, of course, this is why they do this. Because, and if you can look at why the elite, quote unquote, in anything, most of them are based in stress. The elite education is based in stress. You know what I mean? It's everything. Everything, whether elite physical, it's all based on like a lot of stress and like what you do in that stress. So this is why we're big on foundation. Like a lot of part of our process is like training, whether it's training the mind, training our spirit, like, and a lot of the training is around stress, like stress tests for us.
Time under pressure.
Like, what can we do to put ourselves in stressful situations so that when we get in stressful situations, we're good.
Right.
Like,
you just keep pushing the line, push that baseline further and further back.
We continue to become familiar with situations so that when we get in situations, we've become familiar. We're familiar with this, you know, and I love it. Like everything's the practice, you know what I mean? Like in regards to, it's the process. And it's funny. I love that you said, you know, I'm in this space where I have all these notes now. And so I remember one night I just like started writing all this thing around like art and heart and everything. And I was like, oh, the art, like your heart is where like the art comes from. And I was like, but the art is the process. And I was like, anything outside of that, that's it. Like, and I was like, yes, and you can, everything a part is the process. And I was like, so even in the selling of, to me, in my process, if I was selling art, that's the like letting go of it. You know what I mean? That's the like relinquishing of it, like letting it out my system, like letting the energy
being able to move on to the
being
next.
able to move on with the piece of like whatever it is, like whatever. But the process is everything. And I think that our frustration a lot of times is when that's disrespected.
Disrespecting the art.
You disrespecting the art. And you know, I said that. It's like, yo, don't disrespect the art. Because you don't disrespect the process. You know, when we watch movies and characters, we really fuck with characters that make us believe that they're dude. And it's usually dudes who actually have done the training and become that person. So, you know, all the martial art dudes that we rock with, it's like, yeah, because we knew they were training out there.
Yeah.
Like Jean-Claude Van Damme, yeah, he's hilarious, he's funny, whatever, he's goofy, but nobody questioned he was real.
Do that split.
He was actually doing that shit. He was actually training. You know what I mean? He was actually doing all those things. But yeah, I think that just really speaks to our foundation. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Like, what was, if you remember, because you're so old and wise. If you remember, what your thought process was back then, around when you were like 16 and a teenager, because it was so different. And I know clearly what my thought process was, and we were in a different different. We were in a different space in regards to like our desires and focuses, but our process, like I know that our processes were very different in that role, but in the same breath, I think our foundations were around the same. But I want to know if you could speak to some of that when you were around that age, from like the second half of high school through.
It was probably even before that though, because a lot of, obviously, I kind of almost grew up with two families because I also had Tal and his family, so I grew up with this.
Wally with mom.
I grew up with this physicist, Jewish mystic dad, as well as my physical, athletic, driven father. And I spent a tremendous amount of time with them. And so, learning about physics and metaphysics through mom and through Wally in a different way, like sort of changed me, where I'm like, yo, none of this feels right. And then to be like learning about like Schrödinger cat theory, as a very young kid, is like none of this feels like it just, like society just felt so stupid. It's just like the tangibility of it felt stupid. Like it just felt wrong. Like, yo, this is not efficient. And then I'm like, yo, this is dumb. And the only reason that there has to be like a reason why it's dumb like this.
Yeah.
And then, reason, like sort of learning like these really like these quantum physics at a very, very sort of young age, but also mysticism and spirituality. I'm like, oh, this is dumb because people are dumb.
Yeah.
Because like it has to be dumb because
they're making it dumb because they recognize
they
know their audience. They know their audience. Yeah, they know their audience.
Like on Earth, on the physical realm, we know who our audience is.
Yeah.
So we have to create something that is tactile and works for them. That's age appropriate. You know what I'm saying?
No,
and it's like when these are a bunch of new people who forget, their spiritual history or whatever, and I guess so. That's probably where it started. Where I was looking at the whole thing like this is silly, and like sort of like building frustration around that though.
Yeah.
Where it's like this doesn't actually feel right. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel right. So now I'm starting to look for things to make it feel better. Or ways to change it.
So you were focused because I said when you got to a point where I don't want to say
I just felt like the world was like actually against.
Yeah.
It was almost like the sides were being drawn and they were very clear cut.
Yeah.
Like there is real secret societies, not like QAnon shit. Like there's actual secret societies that are practicing magic and understand magic through a metaphysical physics space and quantum physics space. And I'm like 13, 14 years old, and I'm kind of like looking at that like, nah, this shit is real. Yeah. Like this is really real. Like this is, so I'm like, I got to read these books. This Unseen Hand and Behold a Pale Horse and like, like these 13th Tribe and all these books that are like trying to, and I'm thinking like, okay, who were they actually killing and what were they talking about?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well that put me on another path and, and just things, that's when it kind of was like, all right, something else is going on here.
Because if you look at the like physiologically how we grow as humans, and like there's a lot of data that shows like most teenagers are rebellious and everything like that. In that age group and like coming of their own. How much do you think in regards to the space? Because I do think that there was an abundance of when you're on your own. There was just like when you left to go to school, there was just an abundance of information that you were accumulating. You know what I mean? At that point, when you were studying at LIU. And even when you came back, but I feel like it was like exponentially to some degree, you were just like boom, 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 bodying all this information and gaining all this stuff, different stuff. And then from when you left LIU and then came back, where did it get to the point where you felt like you wanted to express it with music? Because so much, I don't want to say that the music, it was definitely some form. Game Rebellion definitely came from like an anger, like a releasing of the frustrations that were going on. But I felt like all the information that you were building, it made you more knowledgeable. So like, yo, it just made you more of a, like, this whole shit is full of shit. It just added to your, you know what I mean? Almost like a confirmation bias of like, yeah, everything I'm reading now is just confirming how ridiculous this is.
I think I'd say a lot of that process for me, I don't even Coop talked about this. He's like, yo, I remember he said this recently. He's like, we would go anywhere, and he's like, you would read anything. Like if there was just like sitting at a person's table and there was just like a magazine of coupons, you would just like read the magazine of coupons rather than engage in like the stupid conversations we were having. And he's like, I always thought that was funny. Like you would literally read anything that was just more informational than what was going on.
That's mitigating your situation.
Right. So, right. Yeah. He's like, yo, we'd go to parties. There would be parties. Like, I'd lose you in a party, and like you'd be like in the parents' bookshelf, like just looking like, I wonder what books I could get. And I think a lot of that's
came interesting socially, that you would be willing to physically put yourself in a space. I just won't go.
Yeah. You won't go to the party.
I'll just be like, nah, I'm good, because I know that I'm not going to be engaged at the party. You were like, no, I'm going. And so there's something to the physical capacity that's like, yo, you see the value in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm
still like that.
Yeah,
you know, like
absolutely. I know that.
I'll still go to the club and all that shit, and just post up and be like,
I'm with you. Yeah.
You know, like, okay, I'm looking at this shit, and I'll be there, and I'll know all the people. I'll know the doorman and the bouncers and all that shit, and I'll be like, well, I not now, but in general, like, yeah, maybe 5 years, 6 years, you know, like it was normal. It was normal for me to be in the club and on a Kindle.
But you know, like at what point? Because it's funny, but do you think that from an adolescent age and just that young stage, do you think that's like part of our physiological digestion page? So it's like, because you were getting so much information, you were processing it a lot, but you weren't necessarily digesting it. Like the same way that you look at people now and you're like, yo, you just started this stuff, and you didn't just start in regards to information, but you were learning at such a rate that how much of it was able to digest it and process it without having to give your perspective and react on it, because the music was based upon a lot of the like, yo, this is what's as opposed to being like, yeah, like I'm not at peace with the fact that this is, you know what I mean? Like it was a very different age. Now it's interesting to hear it would be interesting to hear now, because I do think there's a wisdom that's come along with that perspective of everything that you've learned and are continuing to learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I was definitely in the same spaces that people, you know, were in. I mean, how many Thanksgivings did I disrupt?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like Christmas, you know, I just, you know, would try to dismantle all of that shit. And it was, you know, new information, taking on a tremendous amount of new information and sort of like wanting to share it and wanting to get it out. And I think the thing about, you know, well, I also got a job at Barnes & Noble very young in order to get books. I very specifically was like, I knew that I wanted a job at Barnes & Noble because I wanted the entire New Age section, right? The whole New Age section. I was like, I want one copy of every single book that's in this New Age section. And it wasn't massive then, you know, but I knew that like I needed to dive in and figure out what it was. And I also remember like getting a Black's Law dictionary and like an etymological dictionary and being like, I need to know the origins of words and language because this is important. And, you know, the words that we're using, and sort of like studying like as I was studying sort of like the magic and the history of like magic, or, you know, spiritualism. Was
that intention in the process? Did you learn that in the process, or was that like beforehand? So you thought about like, okay, I'm into this, so I need to get a job in Barnes & Noble, or was it like when you got a job at Barnes & Noble?
No. I knew that I wanted to get a job at Barnes & Noble so that I could get these books.
Gotcha.
I was like, I need books. I don't know if you remember when I guess like 10th grade, I got rid of all my clothes.
Yeah, I remember that.
And like,
and then you got rid of your bed.
I got rid of my bed. I got rid of slept on the floor. Like I got rid of everything. I just was like, I just want books.
Yeah.
And I think I had some music equipment in there at the time, but I just wanted books. Mostly it was like, I just want books and I want everything gone. I want to just study. And it's hilarious because I wasn't doing any schoolwork.
I was about to say, not schoolwork.
I was not doing any schoolwork at all. Like, I did not give a shit about doing schoolwork, and I didn't care about. I wasn't cutting school. I didn't care. Like, I still went to school. Same thing. I'll go.
Yeah.
I just post up and not do nothing.
No, I feel you.
Right, like, and be like, oh no, I'm smarter than everyone here, or smarter. You know, like, I know that I have more. You know, like, I know that I have my what I'm digesting and what I'm taking on is like far beyond the capacity of what they're sharing and teaching. Yeah. But it's like, I don't give a fuck about none of this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here for the social aspect of it, but I'm doing real work, you know, like in my off time or whatever.
You're actually the most consistent person that I know. And I think most people in general are just inconsistent if you pay attention to them, especially over long periods of time. But you're definitely the most consistent person I know. Your consistencies are just inconsistent with society.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you know what I mean, like everything that you're.
Yeah, there's no like societal payoff.
Yeah.
For my consistency.
Chances are, if society sees it as value, you're like, fuck that, like maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And. But probably not. Maybe, but probably not. Even if you're saying like, yeah, and it's almost like in the moment of you seeing value, you're looking for it. But then it's funny because I think that because of I talk with this with Mom, because of my path and where I went and was so focused with it, I saw so much value, even in my frustration sometimes with you. I knew that there was so much value. It was like kept somewhat me sane, because you couldn't you couldn't come be raised in our family and not see all the stuff and understand. So I never looked at you and said, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's wrong.
Right.
It was always like, he's just maybe extreme, or he's just maybe too much, even if it was to me, you know what I mean? The same thing that we always get from people. But I always knew that there was so much value in it, and I knew that there was going to be so many moments where I would need it. So even if it was me just listening to you get angry and rant at people, and I'd be like, yeah, hey man, it's right. Like, I can't do that right now. I don't have the energy to actually go in that space. Yeah. And I know that it might even destroy. And I also knew that if I give energy to that, then literally it would, what I was doing was fail. Like, I knew myself, and I just knew that, like, you know, same reason why, like,
I think I also knew that too in terms of you, right? Like, it was very clear, like, I didn't want you, I didn't want you to have to do that, right? Like, even with the clothes, we were younger and all that stuff.
Like enough. You did a really,
like, I don't think
very older brother. Like, you looked out for me very much from an older sibling aspect of, you gave me just enough, knowing me, and just enough to what you thought was beneficial for me and wouldn't take me overboard too much, but allowed me to still be in my lane and function in my lane very much so, in regards to like.
Yeah, I didn't want them to Colin cap you.
Yeah, without them taking me. Yeah. Without
even though, like, I think about it all the time, right? Like, I think like where Colin was when he took that stance, I'm like, yo, RG was fucking light years ahead of that. But I think because of where Colin was, he could take that stance.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because he didn't see all of the consequences and benefits at the same time. Like, he wasn't doing a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm always doing that.
Right.
So
it's almost like he had to be in a certain space to do that. And so it's not a shot. You know what I'm saying? It's not a shot at Colin, because like, I actually, I went to a tremendous amount of your home games and tremendous amount of your games, and I've never stood for anything. I never stood for a Pledge of Allegiance ever in my fucking since I was a little kid. I've never stood for any of that shit or anything. I'm not participating. So, I remember being in fourth grade not participating, being like, nope. And then I remember them being like, you have to sing, and Ahmed is one of my best friends, and I would always be like, Ahmed Ika. And they'd be like, stop saying Ahmed, you got to say America. And I'd be like, wow, this is so dumb. I'm not pledging allegiance to a piece of cloth. Put fucking jeans up there. It's cloth. It is cloth. I'm not, like, you're not, I just could not wrap my head around it at a very, very young age. And so for me, I just did not want them to cap you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't want them to.
Absolutely.
And because I also knew the benefit, because I also did my own cost-benefit analysis and was like, yo, you in this position, go as far as you can in this position, because this is going to allow me, mom, everyone else to do actually on the other side a tremendous amount of shit.
It's funny. I think it's the same thing for me. Like it's like in the moments where we've all like in our frustrations with each other, it's been like when we thought each other was bullshitting. It's like, yo, don't bull. Like, what you doing, yo? Know what you're doing and don't bullshit about that. Like, and then for me, I would be the same thing. I'm like, yo, stop. And I say it like forgetting who you are and forgetting what the fuck, yo. Don't forget your ability, like why you're in this, why you do this shit. Like, don't get caught up in the sense of like, don't get caught up in your anger. It's not about that. Don't get caught up in, you know what I mean? Don't get caught up in any of that. And I totally understand it because I've always been doing the cost analysis at a really young age of like, does it make sense? You know, we watched something the other day when it was like, sometimes the right thing is, so sometimes, what did they say? It was like something around like, sometimes
the right thing isn't the best thing.
Yeah, it's like it was around that. Basically, it was like the right thing isn't the best thing, and it's very personal. And I was like, yeah, you have to pick and choose that based upon like foundationally, like based upon what I value. You know, the situation with me in college when after my freshman year, and I was like, okay, this is not going well, and I know that this is not gonna go well. Like, if I'm on this track, I'm gonna be out of this school. So I need to figure out how to do this, and it's not gonna look how people want it to look. It's got to look how I decide it to look. And I have to be really okay with that. And me coming to grips with like, okay, that means I'm not going to actually get good grades. I need to be okay with that because I know other people won't be okay with it. So I need to be okay with it and be able to stand my ground and voice that. Because people will say, yo, why you don't care about that? And I need to be able to say, because of this, boom, 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 and know why. And if I don't know why, then I'm foolish. Like, I need to know why I'm doing certain things if there's going to be opposition.
Yeah, know your why.
So if there's going to be opposition, that was always been part of my process. Like, you know, when I decided, I need to leave Bosco my freshman year, it was clear cut on why I need to leave Bosco. And then when I decided I need to take my ass back to Bosco, I was clear cut like, I need to do I need to do this because I know myself. And foundationally, you know, that's the stuff that we got from mom. I got it from you. I got it from Deer, from, you know, it's just all so much in my pot. And it's funny because I think that I told this to mom the other day. I was like, I really do think that I was so fortunate because I got like the best of everyone. You know what I mean? Like really everybody gave me so much in regards to like, you know, our perspective of dad is different because it's different. It was just a very different space. So like what he gave me was very different. And part of it was his able to change his process, have his perspective be in a little different space. And then mom as well. And Sharon, Uncle Rick, and all that, you know, Dear, Grandpa, and all these different spaces. And then also because I also was around and I was very clingy and I was trying, you know what I mean? So they were giving me, they recognized, and it's really interesting. You needed less in many regards.
Oh yeah, so I got less.
Right, exactly. So you got less in many regards. So and that's a really interesting, you know what I mean? It's like an interesting dynamic and it like fluctuates, you know what I mean? Like it can be very detrimental to, because it's like the kid who you recognize, oh, they're good, they're always good, and then you're good, and then you realize, oh, they're not good. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, yeah, the whole time it's like, yeah, I've been good, but like nobody checking me, and now I'm not good. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, they swim really strong, don't worry about it, and then they drown. And there's that capacity of like where we're having like an understanding, but we still have to do like balance checks, you know what I mean? And personal balance checks, and we have to like where we can voice and like, yo, I do need more in regards to this, and then the tribal checks in regards to like, yo, okay, who needs a little bit, who needs more, who needs a little bit more. I think
it's all hard because
that's why we're not supposed to do this shit alone.
Yeah, you can't.
By no means, we're not supposed to be doing this shit alone, man, because this shit is hard. Like it's a lot. Life has a capacity to be a lot. Life happens and so much stuff. And when I look at it, you know, I think about all the things I've been able to do and are doing in my life. Literally, I do feel pretty confident that I can get most of it done.
Yeah.
But I feel even more confident about getting it done is because I do know that the things that I feel like I can't get done, somebody in my space can get it done for me.
Yeah.
So it's like it allows me to feel like, oh, I'm good. Mom used to always say that I was the type of kid that I just need to know where everybody's at. I don't need to go to them, but it's like, all right, where you at, Mom? I needed to know that proximity-wise, I could either get to Mom or she could get to me. Then I'm good. Now I can laser in. It's like, yo, you got me? Okay, now I'm good. Now I'm not going to worry about you. I'm going to go really hard. And I need to be able to, like, do that.
It's funny that you said that because something just came to me. It was super crystal clear, too. I remember who I was with, maybe someone from, like, the fam.
Okay.
Like, maybe we were, like, one of the kids one of the cousins from the Bronx came up or something. I don't know. But I remember we were, like, in Pennsylvania, and we were, like, I was deep in the woods with someone who was not comfortable being deep in the woods.
Yeah.
And they were like, Joe, how's anyone going to know where we are? And I was like, they don't need to know where we are. I know where they are. Right? And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I just remember being like, you need to know where, like, they need to know where you are. Like, if you know where you are and you know where they are, then we're good. Yeah, like, we're good. But it's funny that you said, like, needing to know where people are. Okay, but I also was never where I said I was for the most part. Anyway, but yeah, I think that it's very interesting the more that we talk about these things and, like, go back through, like, the family and sort of unravel it. And I think about your name and my name and how those, like, what they actually mean and how they actually manifest themselves, and why it always being, like, you always having beef with the fact that, like, your name is Ryan.
Yeah,
like,
you're fucking basic.
Yeah, this basic name, right? This basic name.
Ryan Brett. Fucking basic.
Ryan Brett.
You
right?
can't get any more stereotypically.
My name is Kien Elon.
Yeah.
Right? And Kien means the ancient one, and Elon is the tree, like, tree, but it's like a tree of life, in Hebrew. And the fact that Mom named us those things not that far apart from each other, and who she was, it was almost like she named us for our spirits and named us for our path.
She tapped.
Right?
She tapped. Yeah,
she was totally tapped in. Like, Ryan Grant is literally a fucking football name. Like, you have your name fits on your jersey. Right? Kien Netic is the ancient one's name. It's like a chant. It's something that's spell.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a mantra that you can kind of, like, say over and over again. Like, it's an om. But Ryan, meaning little prince.
Yeah.
Is like, that's exactly who you are. Like, that's exactly who you're like a prince in this world.
I don't want no subjects. But
but that's why you Netic the King.
Yeah, no,
like,
word,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
word.
But it's just like you have a very.
I'm trying to look out for the people.
But there is royal. There is something very royal about you. And there's something that's also very disconnected to the people about you, where you're like, that's why I don't fuck with that. That's why I don't do that. That's why I don't do this. There is a very, to me, there's a very, I see that, right? And I feel like very ancient. I feel like very old. I feel like the tree that has many fruit, and many branches and many, like, many different things that I'm sharing in this way. And, like, and whenever this tree falls, many people are going to eat from this tree. And when this tree falls, many other trees are going to sprout from it, And I do feel like, that's pretty much who I am and pretty much who you are. And Mom's awareness to name us that
is pretty remarkable.
It's pretty incredible, It's like,
it's incredible, and then in the same breath, it's like, well,
it makes sense. It makes sense.
Exactly what makes sense.
I mean, I think it's also the other thing that I find very interesting. Like, even in the development, like, this exists off of an idea where I was like, yo, like, I'm doing a podcast. Yeah. I do it for a little while, like, get a couple good guests, realize that, it's all on me. I got to do this by myself. I'm not doing this fucking thing. Fuck that. You know what I mean?
And it's funny. Absolutely. And I'm being really clear, like, nah, I'm not doing that shit. I've been asking about being podcasts for years. Like, nah, I don't want to do that shit. Nope. I know what comes along with that. And a lot of these podcasts, I don't want to talk about the shit they want to talk about. Like, it's all football. Of course, I'm getting ready to do a Packer podcast. That's how it goes. But, I don't want to do anything to do with it. You do it. I see it. I'm like, I don't want no parts of, like, all
editing, uploading, none of that shit. Right? So when I reached out to create the new one that that I'm working on, I knew, okay, I'm not doing that again, right? Like, we're going to create it. But so when you came back and was like, yo, I'm doing one, I knew, like, oh, that's coming first.
Okay.
Like, this one has to go first because Ryan's going to do it so dialed in that I actually am just going to, it's like drift. You know when they was like the lead rider?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, I'm just going to get right behind him. I'm going to get right behind him and like drift behind him because he's gonna already have it all in place. But I already know all the players.
Yeah, it's funny.
Let me hit up. I was like, let me help produce this podcast for you and put you in, get these people together. So it's like, I'm glad that every single person that you're using are relationships that I developed.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
no, and
I'm not involved in that process, but it's like,
I'm gonna take it's funny.
Use every single individual who I developed.
I'm like, we're doing this, and I said, and I'm gonna take this, and I'm just gonna go. And she even said, like, damn. Even I said, yeah, it's taking way more work, and my focus is, but I know this is gonna work. And then the capacity of like, I know how it's gonna help yours, how it's gonna help everything else.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm so glad Kien has opened this door, which you do so many often. You know what I mean? More often than not. But that's how it's been. That's how it goes, and that's how it's been. You step into that space, really regarding everything. So much of what.
Oh, even football.
Everything, yeah. So really just everything. So much of what I've done. The only thing that I think about, the only thing that I'm like, you know what,
those babies.
I just really want to. Well, the babies in general, yeah, the babies, of course.
But you're the man.
From like a quote unquote interest or hobby aspect, the guitar is something that I was like, nah, I've always wanted to play the guitar, and they had lessons when I was in Green Bay for me. The Packers did it for me.
Oh,
and
nice.
I said, nah, I couldn't do it.
Didn't want to split the focus.
I knew myself, and I was like, I can't actually. It'll actually make me not really want to do the guitar, and I'll never do it, and I won't pick it up again because I'll like become disinterested with it because I can't really focus on it, and so I'll half-ass it, and so it'll go by the wayside as opposed to when I really like something, I can't half-ass it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'd rather be like, nah, get out of here. You know what I mean? Like, it's recognizing like, oh, right now I have something that I really want to focus on and I can't give to you. I don't want to because I know I'm going to fuck it up if I half-ass it. And so the guitar was one thing. The girls I was able to produce pretty, not by myself. Portia did she had a little role in the manifesto.
Yeah, you guys knocked that one out the park.
Yeah,
you set the bar really high. I'm over here like, man, maybe I don't even waste anyone's time.
It's funny, man. I tell Portia, I'm like, you know what? The one thing I will say, Portia, I think we can figure anything out. I said I trust ourselves together that we can figure anything out. You know what I mean? I was like, look about, even in the co-parenting space. I was like, I know that space. I grew up in that space. You've done a good job. But I do think we've upgraded even the co-parenting spaces that I've grown around and I grew up around. We've definitely upgraded that. And to the point that people they're like, really? What? Like, are you? Even family members are like, what? And I'm like, I do appreciate, and yes, and it's still a learning process. And by no means, it's definitely like we're going through it. But I appreciate that we are actually, and, I'm always proud of Portia and the path because she's working and she's trying. It's just that, especially from her, where she's come from, it's like, wow, man. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, totally different. I mean, that's the thing, though. We also took the tribe thing for real.
Yeah.
Right. Like so it's like it made it very, like if you're in a tribe and you have children with a person in a tribe, first of all, one, depending on how long ago it is, people didn't really necessarily know. Monogamy is a pretty new phenomenon, So people didn't necessarily even know who their father was. It's like this idea that it takes a village is like because it actually takes a fucking village to figure out whose kids these are, right? So we're gonna raise these kids because they're all of our children, And then
that I just want to like speak to that really, the fact of it takes a village. When we talked about like more hands on deck, and the reason why people can get shit done is because they have hands on deck. You can isolate ideas and isolate job roles and everything like that when you have more hands on deck to not have to be concerned with X, Y, and Z.
Right, of
Whether
course.
It's frustrations, disappointment, whatever it may be. It's like, you don't have to worry about that. You have less time in your space of being frustrated about something. It's because you know what? I have less frustrations. You know why? Because I'm not worried about a lot of things because the things.
Well, and also you have less depression and anxiety because also people you're not alone.
Yeah.
In the same space, right? Because there's more people.
Yeah, because there's more people that can.
And also they don't care. Yeah. They're like, oh, shut up. right? Like, so it's very hard to be.
the accountability. It's like keep moving.
We gotta keep it moving. We gotta keep it pushing, right? So there's, these are phenomenons of wealth, abundance, and dysfunction that is born out of wealth and abundance. Like this anxiety and depression and all this shit. It's like, it's real, but it's a real consequence of living this shitty style, like this lifestyle where we can really bridge the gap. Where when Benjamin Franklin said the greatest threat to the colonies is in England, it's fucking these individuals going off and living with the natives.
Do you think that it's the process of recognizing that the separation is where you know what I mean? Like the detriment aspect is in like the separation. Is it the extreme of the separation from tribe, or is it just like separate? Because we see the value in individual separation. It's almost like rite of passage. So you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, tribes do it all the time. Like, yo, get the fuck out of here.
You need that.
You come back in 5 days.
Like come back when you're ready, or come back after you've
your vision
gone
quest.
Through exactly. And there's so much value to that. So is it in the extreme of the separation? Because it's not really necessarily just the separation. It's like
it's definitely in the extreme of the separation. It's also in the pursuit. It's also in this sort of like weird pursuit of material over people, right? Because they've
they always say,
when you put profit over people.
Yeah, we hear that property rights over human rights.
Right. Class. Yeah, that's you can't put when you start doing that, it becomes very, very dangerous. And I mean, I think it actually does something. And I'm not like I really have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't know. I'm just thinking. I just think that it does something to. I think it just does something to your mind where it splits your mind in a way that you're able to behave in a particular way because you don't feel the direct connection and need of individuals because you can purchase.
Yeah. For instance, like
you can purchase safety and you can purchase. You can almost buy your way out of being a decent human being in an overly capitalist society or like this weird sort of toxic capitalist society. You can purchase your way out of being decent human person because you're separated from nature. And areas of extreme nature where nature is extreme, you can't really do that. Yeah. So tribal societies and globally are relying on each other, right? So this is why you have, and this is not like a black-white thing, it's an actual tribe thing. So if you come from a space where you're tied to nature, you're going to behave very, very differently if you come from a space where you believe that nature is your enemy. Absolutely. Right? So the dominant mindset for the globe, especially for the sort of colonized fucking Western European globe, like colonized globe, became nature is the enemy. Where you have to conquer nature. So this idea, and there was no like cooperation with nature, no appreciation of nature, because nature actually was trying to fucking kill them. Yeah. So for their worldview became very like capitalism is born from hoarding. You have to hoard. We only have fucking 3 months to, to grow our food and get our food and hoard it. And we need as much food as we can to survive. Sexism is born out of subservience, women's subservience to like men. Because if you don't stay here and I push you out in the snow, you're done.
Our brain actually changed. Like
it does also. Especially if it's cold. If it's cold, your brain does change.
And at a young age, like
if you're vitamin D deficient, your brain changes as well. And as a result of being cold above the 37th.
The premise of like doing certain things to children at a young age, like it's like framing their world. Like framing how they're going to think about what they're going to see, and I think that really plays such a more part in like the schooling aspect, how we teach our children what's pushed upon them in regards to desires and roles, everything across the board at this point.
It's just dominant narrative.
Yeah, it's just so it's like, we understand like sleep training. We talked about that recently, and it's like it absolutely works. Absolutely. I'm not by any means an advocate for it. In the sense of, I don't think it's my thing. I think it's a
necessity in a society that
exactly it works.
That needs people to wake up at a certain time and go to work.
Exactly, it's necessity because parents need to get sleep, so they're prioritizing their sleep over
like nature, right? Like, because nature is sort of my baseline. Because right now everything is so layered and so weird that I've had to like strip it away.
Just go back to.
So I'm like, okay, let me just strip things away and look at like what do we see in nature? Because if we don't see it in nature, and I don't mean like like a microphone we don't see in nature, but we do see amplification in nature, right? So, but if we don't see sort of like our behaviors in nature,
the role it plays, absolutely.
Then I'm like, okay, this is a pathology that's born out of our society. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for us as a species. So I'm sort of, that's where what I'm doing right now is sort of like unraveling, ideas from a space where it's like, okay, do I see that expressing itself in nature?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's like a lot of the things that, and that way you can get to a space where your like baseline is like, okay, if it's not really in nature, it's probably not healthy for us for the most part,
Yeah.
So it's like when
it's not foundationally healthy. Like it's almost like you can take it, you know what I mean, give it, but it's not gonna actually. Don't hold on to it like as a foundation because it's transient. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like there are certain things that wave in the wind and just come and go with the wind. There's certain smells and it's like, that's a great smell, but like, just let it go. You know what I mean? I agree with you though.
So it's just, so I was been thinking about this, right? It's like there have been societies that are actually pedonormative societies, like Greece, Rome, like the Roman Empire was a pedonormative society. It was like, and this is actually the society that America was built off of, right? Like it's little Rome, but it was a pedonormative society that was born out of a homonormative society that was then born out of like a hyper heteronormative society. It's like these are the processes that happen where we just like we start making things. The only thing that's really normative is nature, like what's in nature consistently over 350 million years. Not like what you've thought of in the last 250,000 years. Like that's okay, cool. Your little small human brain created this. But what does your reptilian brain know? What does your mammalian brain know? And then this little bit of slice, you know what I'm saying? Like this slice of this human experience that you're just trying to get through to get to your God brain, which nobody ever, like very few people ever get to. Because once they do, they're like, this other stuff is
it's nothing.
I'll just let go.
Nothing.
But in this space, we're just like constantly being like pushed back and forth. And it's like, I believe that people should do anything that they want to do. Right. Like, but I don't believe that they should impose and imprint that onto me. Right. But in society, that's how it goes. Right. Because you're looking for rights and you're looking for legislation and you're looking to be protected. But all of these things are born out of fragile spaces.
And it's funny. I don't even having the understanding that is kind of like, so it makes sense as to why both sides, what's born from that. You know what I mean? It makes sense once when you speak that language and you say that societies, as I said, everything makes sense based upon like I always reference like values and priorities. When you look at the situation you're in,
right?
Like why people move, why family members move to different parts. I got a job here. We're moving here. It's like, values and priorities. Like be honest around what you valued and prioritized in that moment. You know what I mean? And
that's where we currently are, right? We're currently in this space where people are like valuing comfort, right, over this discomfort, right? They're like, we have to vote Trump out. And I'm like, oh, where's all this energy coming from? I'm like, all of this energy that you have is coming from Trump being in.
Yeah.
Right? And your fear of it getting worse is why you want him out. My acknowledgement that it could get worse is why I want him in. Because I'm like, oh no, I want the weight to get heavier.
What right now? Yeah, it's like right now you're in it.
Because you're in a fight.
Because right now you're fighting. Like people are fighting. I'm like, no, but you're fighting. Like
it's because they don't want opponents. So here's the thing. It's like these people aren't built. Right now we've been built as a society to like actually be cushioned, right? Like so they
I get it, but it all comes back to the fact that they don't actually trust because they don't trust that they can get it done.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like, they don't even trust in their ability to figure out how to get it done. Like they might not, me saying like, oh, I don't know how to win now, but I could win. We talking about Sage and Steel. They just arm wrestled and Sage flipped out. She lost the arm wrestle with Steel. And I'm like, Sage, you got this, because she was fighting, and I'm like, I know right now you don't know how to, like,
Yeah,
you don't know it
how
right
to-
now,
right.
and I was like, but trust, at some point, like, you're just push and
But
desire.
this is right.
But
So there's
people don't-
participation
yeah.
trophies, right?
Yeah,
Like, so
I'm
we've got
nah,
we've got a participation trophy culture,
We
right?
are
A cushioned like a cushioned culture where we want creature comforts like over everything. But we don't realize that those creature comforts is what makes us actually weaker. It's in the face of a Trump that people actually burned their cities down across America.
Yeah.
Like, Obama kept a lot of that shit at bay, right? Obama was able to keep, like, Obama was the greatest pacifier ever, right? Like, he just like lulled everybody into like hope.
And
Like,
I feel
yo,
like,
hope,
honestly, that
hope is the worst drug ever. As soon as that hope campaign thing, I was like,
that's with anything. Most of the time, if you feel good, most of the time, the people that make you feel the best in the moment are usually the pacifier. I don't know.
for sure.
I kind of feel like that, you know.
But if you're not, but this is what I'm saying. Like, if you actually value what you believe that you value, right, or that you're saying you value. If I'm a social justice warrior,
Yes.
I don't know, that fucking term is corny. Like, if I'm just someone who's fighting for social justice, right? If I'm just someone who's fighting for what I believe in, and I would like the world to be a better place for what I believe to be a better place for my people, right?
No.
I need, one, a recognizable opponent, right? Like, I need to understand like what I'm training for, what's my environment, what am I fighting for? What environment what environment were my discomforts born out of? What environment were my oppressions born out of? I shouldn't be fighting to get back to the space where all of my oppressions were born out of.
Yeah.
I should be fighting to build something completely new or something that is completely different. The one thing I'll say is that I'm not pro-Trump. I'm not pro any of these fucking. I'm pro-president. I don't give a fuck about none of these guys. But what I do understand is that Trump was different, right? Even in just like his expression, his absurdities, his communication, his lack of communication, right? Whatever, when he's like, what? Like, you know, it's almost like he's just so different that it's like, that is a wild card.
Difference considered dangerous, and dangerous is considered.
Fantastic.
I know, and
Right,
we
like,
have a different perspective we have a different perspective and a different relationship with what dangerous looks like, because.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm also the same
Because
person that has been
train.
openly like, look, if this COVID situation is killing off the elders of our population and the immune compromise of our population, and I mean like the extreme elders, because it's the extreme elderly, and the immune deficient of our population, this is good for the species. Back to the nature, right? It's a good thing that this is happening. It's not good to. Also, what old people want to live isolated and alone from their families? No, that's not. Old people aren't looking forward.
But society does. What do you mean?
No, it's all make believe. This whole
feel
thing.
you. No, I dig it.
It's all. I'm not saying that COVID is make believe.
No,
could be a disease. I'm sure that it's actually a man-made disease or some shit like that. But what I'm saying is that old people don't want to be isolated.
Of course not.
From the youth. You try to not go see your grandmother. Like the thing that grandmothers and grandparents always want is to see their grandchildren.
Yeah.
To see their great grandchildren. They don't want there's no life worth living that doesn't involve the next generations, the seeds.
That's the point.
That's the whole there's no life worth living that. So this is all just nonsense and make believe based on these. It's just, again, it's stupid. Fucking society is all dumb, and it's like it's so obviously dumb on a basic level that I have a very frustrated position where I'm like,
it's like, so I totally
I'm sure that your sound man is hearing right now as my vocal tone is getting more excited. I'm getting more and more hot. Like,
how have you found for yourself? Because I understand it. It doesn't make sense. How do you? But in the same breath, you're in it. You live it, and you're participating. And I've had this whole thing. I was like, you still participate. That was just something that's like, so like part of my frustration would be like, for yourself, because I care about you. I used to be like, you need to find a way. I don't want you to drive yourself crazy. And literally to the point that I think we all have breaking points. Like my relationship with you and my attachment to you sees the value, but also sees like, I don't want it to get to you to the point that it's now detrimental in everything that you do, because
Right.
you are choosing. So it's like either pick and choose. Like I'm one of those. I'm definitely as much as I love being around you, but as much as I loved you, and as much as I like love being around you and learning from you, I also would said I would have no problem if my brother said, "Yo, I'm out," and I would totally understand it, because that's actually him doing a cost analysis and saying, for my own self-preservation, I need to be out. It's like the space I'm in right now, I need to be out.
Hard.
Now, so how do you navigate?
It's super hard, because I don't feel, I think we had this conversation where I'm like, yo, I barely feel like myself, right? I don't feel like a self. Like I feel like I'm literally like a vessel for utilization. In, like how do I become useful for?
So when you feel like self, is that when you get frustrated? Is that when the frustration comes? Because when you're in your recognition,
when I feel like I'm
you,
not. Yes, when I feel like I'm.
It's like when you come down. When you come down and start trying to feel human shit.
And also when I feel like I'm not being useful, you know what I'm saying, or I'm not contributing in a useful way that would that's a value add.
So what? Okay, and I think that honestly, I think that that's a human thing, and I think that our struggles with self are a lot of times when we feel like we're not quote unquote being quote unquote productive, or you know what I mean, like useful. I like personally as well. It's like the value, and sometimes it's like you have to do. You know what I mean?
No, and it's hard. It's also hard when you think nothing matters. Not from a nihilistic sense.
Nothing does. It's like we give matter to everything. You know what I mean? We
I make
matter. And
I
based
make
upon
matter.
Value products. So I make it all matter. And
no, I actually make matter.
No, I know. Yeah, we do. No, absolutely. That's it. What are you talking about? I've seen you do it. What do you do? What practices? I want people to hear some of your personal practices in your process to do that, to help mitigate and help navigate everything, because you're taking in so much information and you have such a broad palette perspective. What do you do? Like, what are some of the things that you see value in for personal practice, to actually be able to?
I train every day. I think these are.
In what ways? What does that mean?
So I think these are. I think what we were talking about, like finding the things that are consistent over and over and over again, where you find value in something and you know that the value in this shows up everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, like I do breath work.
That's why I'm doing this. That's it. This is why I'm allowing people to speak positive, because I want them to see the value in what they're doing in everything. Is that take what you do and yes, use it as a remembrance in moments, use it as like a baseline so that you can apply it to everything, but continue.
So my process of like working on like breath work, and meditation, recognizing the value in that, to be, to ground the spirit and to spiritualize the ground.
Also, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying, right? So it's like let me
like shoot you.
Yeah,
when you want to go up, go up.
This vibration, right?
You need to be brought down.
This vibration right here.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
little big vibe. No, it's fucking. So like connecting,
absolutely.
but actually sort of
going back and
transient back and forth, and being able to
the awareness of when you need to go up, and also use it to go down, because that's the breath work. It's different. Like people say, like, oh, how do you calm yourself down? Breath work.
How do you hype yourself up?
Breath work.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah. So
the intention is different.
The breath work being super important. The meditation with intention. Consistently training, and physically training, martial arts, as well as like active training. It's funny because I do a workout, all those those Iron Wolf workouts, which are like just massive amounts of burpees and push-ups and all of these things. I'll do that and still do the kettlebell and still do and still go to jiu-jitsu, because I'm also looking for discomfort, because there's a certain point where it's like, I like jiu-jitsu because it's constantly evolving. Like you you're actually not really good. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just like
it's all process.
You're
never,
just
literally
yeah,
like it
constant.
You're always reminded of that.
Yeah. You'll never be good at jiu-jitsu. You'll be good to someone else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you'll be better than someone else.
There's always a reference point.
I'm never going to be like good at it. And it's also evolving. It's real time. I think that we should probably talk about jiu-jitsu a little bit at some point. But
you can.
I do this training. I pick like a training that is difficult for me because there's discomfort, and then when you step into discomfort for a period of time, that discomfort isn't uncomfortable anymore.
Yeah.
So then you had to add another level of discomfort. Like there's the knob on my shower doesn't go any further, right? Like the cold on my shower is pretty cold, but not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah, it's all relative.
Right. So like I don't even
cold is a very
I don't even think so. Now I have to go super hot to go back to the cold, so it feels cold for a little while. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not actually cold anymore. So I'm constantly adding another disruptive discomfort, uncomfortable process. So for me now, the uncomfortable process is all these burpees in this Iron Wolf workout. Shout out to Iron Wolf. If you don't know him, you should know him. Check him out on YouTube.
Yeah, we've always found comfort in discomfort.
Yeah. It's like the cold, like going out in the snow and meditating in the snow, and when it's 30 degrees outside, for other people looks insane, and at first it is insane. It's actually super dangerous.
It is insane.
And
I'm not even saying it's not. It's just that we're willing to step into those spaces to find sanity.
We're like, all right, let's dive in. It's to the point where now it's like sitting down reading a Kindle. And it's not snowing outside. It's just 30 degrees. That's whatever. Okay, I'll just, breathe and read. But I think, so those are my processes. I write, obviously.
Yeah, you've always, I was going to ask
you. I write a lot.
You've always written. And why?
Because I think I have been taking in a lot, and I have always sort of taken in a lot and had my own thoughts about things that I wanted to make sure that I had an articulation about the things that I was taking in that made me understand. That's like to make me know that I understood.
Yeah, understood. Yeah,
right. Which is another reason why I have no problem explaining, like why I engage in a lot of these conversations.
Articulate it because you have an understanding of what you've read.
A lot of we talk about that, right? Like you're like, yo, why do you write so much in like? Why even give it so much energy in a group chat or something, or when
and I think and I understand that. I get it. It's just in the moments where I know that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always checking in.
So, it's like it's that thing where for me, writing a lot isn't a lot.
Yeah.
Like deep is only relative to how well you swim, and so for me, it's like, well, it's not really that deep to me, and it really is not that deep to me. It might be like we might be talking about esoteric and blood shit, or heteronormative societies in ancient Rome and how we were born out of that. But I'm like, but I could do that so easily because I've just read so much years and years of that, and
cross relation. Like I said, there's so much. Like even if it's like, yo, I haven't studied Rome, but I have studied so much of this that you are able. You really do have a really strong ability to find the value and connectivity in it all, and you've done that. And I think that's part of like. You can sort of like, that's where wisdom comes. It's like being able to articulate a conversation and have an understanding around something that you haven't necessarily studied, but it's like, oh yeah, of course, because that lies in blah, 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 but using all the other base that you have, because you do have such a wide base of knowledge and understanding, it is so applicable. So even if you've studied a very minute aspect of this, you can connect and realize, oh, boom, 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 connect so much of what you have because your true roots are so strong. So it's like, well, of course I can push that branch out while, you know what I mean? It's like a small sprout, but it's like, I can push this out because my roots are so strong in what I've done. And there's been digestion, there's been regurgitation, there's been let me eat that one more time. You know what I mean? It's been so many years of all that. So you really do, you have a base in so many different conversations that people don't understand. And most people, I get on you sometimes about the engaging and then allowing it to get you frustrated when it's like, yo, know your audience.
Yeah.
You got to know your audience better.
Talking about the writing process was just, I think that's part of my, that's the wisdom for me, is to be able to articulate it, right? Like knowledge, wisdom, understanding. it's the understanding is why I can articulate it so easily now, right? Like, but the knowledge is just data sets, right? It's just data. Knowledge is not really that valuable in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares?
You know, it's just the accumulation of information.
Yeah.
Being able to activate that information is that wisdom, or act on that information is wisdom, right? So that's an activation of knowledge.
So activation is the writing.
Yeah, there's a writing because I'm articulating these ideas in a way that are my own, and I'm using, you know, like metaphors and examples and you know, being able to pull at them from my own life and noticing them in my own life and how they show up. And I was like, okay, cool. Now this is an activation, an application of this and how I show up. Right. And then the physical wisdom of like moving through your life and being like, no, I'm not eating that because I know that, you know, or the other day, you know, when the girls wanted to eat their little like health bars, snack bars before lunch. And I heard the teacher say something like, well, let's eat our lunch first before the snack. And I was thinking, actually, they should eat the snack first because it's sugar.
Let the sugar.
Let the sugar be the first thing that they eat and digest, so they can burn that off, as opposed to like that being the last thing that the energy source that they have. Like burn through that sugar. That's better for them. And that's like that's wisdom of a bunch of data sets, right? Yeah. That's a physical.
That's applying all the knowledge and the understanding of what you're doing.
I think the understanding is knowing the why, right? Like the understanding is being able to pull it up then. And be able to articulate it to someone who doesn't have the knowledge, wisdom, or understanding. Right? Like that's where when you hit into the understanding side of it, is like the translation. Can I make a child
Can you
understand something that is
you think it's teaching? Around teaching?
Yeah. Because I think it's hard to teach something that you don't understand.
Of course.
Right, so
well, to me, that's the baseline of, you know, and that's in my opinion,
and also, you know, but the articulation, and I think what I will say is that a lot of times, in the act of teaching, the act of articulation,
you learn.
There's more understanding that comes along with it, right? So why they say like,
that's actually I am interested. I do want to have some conversations with that process of learning, the process of learning and the process of teaching. You know, I'm looking forward to talking to teachers about that and talking to actual educators around that what that looks like, because it is, you know, it's like constantly. I learned that when I was at Notre Dame, when my teacher told me how much she learned from me in the paper that I wrote. And I was like, oh, you're learning way more from us than you are from that. Like that we are from you.
Yeah. I mean, also, that's one of those things where, you know, like it's an aggregate. You're just like, funnel is coming down, and you're like, oh, great, I get to, you know, read all of this. Where all this information, you have your own thought, and you're like one person in the funnel. Of, you know, 300.
It made me mad for a second, especially when I got the grade on the paper after they had told me that I changed her entire perspective. But,
and you still got to see.
And I still got to see. You literally still got to see. But it also unlocked. It was like I'm good. It also made me see the value in really what I wanted to see in learning. You know what I mean? Just continue to reinforce just learn.
Well, I think that was part of that's another part of the frustration, right? For me, at least when I was, you know, in school and education, it's like, you want to test me on a particular subject to see if I'm proficient in this subject, right? Or you'll ask me questions. Like, it's also why I was able to do relatively well on the SATs and all those things, was because, and I was late and missed the whole first section, but it was because like, oh, okay, now I don't actually have to like have had to listen to you this whole time. This is like my general knowledge base of, and do I know how to take tests? But also it's like, oh, now we're talking about logic and reason, and you know, I'm gonna mess up on this math stuff because I didn't study formulaic math, but I'm gonna body this comprehension side because that I do understand. And it's like I never understood, like, if I can answer your question to comprehension in 15 words, why should I write 1,500 words? It's mental masturbation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, you want me to dance around the fact that I can do this in 15 words. And I remember...
Efficiency holds a high value.
That's also part of the reason why it's like, I'm not going to repeat this process over and over and over again to prove something to you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's silly.
Yeah.
But I also recognize there's value in that, right? And there's a cool Prince song called "There's Joy in Repetition," and
Of course.
there's freedom in discipline, right? To sort of like that Jocko Willink.
Freedom in it. Well, yeah, this is
like
all part of the process. Like perspective. That's where the perspective is.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's like I know that now. In witnessing
that's
you,
why I value discipline so much, because I'm like, it's wild hard.
In witnessing you,
and in that hard, it's
hell
like,
yeah.
I know I can do this shit. I did the hardest. You know what I mean? The hardest thing is having to do the shit you don't want to do. You know what I mean? It's
right.
like, And finding, especially in moments where you recognize the greater good of the outcome. You do want to do it. It's like, I love this. I hate this. Like, how much do you love this?
Right.
Are you willing to do all this that you don't like in regards to that? And it's all perspective. Literally, I know that I could shoot that perspective down. Like,
right. That's why it's always been hard for me, because I've never like really valued. Like for me, the equation always equaled like financial gain.
Yeah.
For like in this society, it always was like financial gain was like what you get as a result of this hard work, or like recognition. And I'm like, fuck, I don't care about either one of those things.
Yeah.
Like that much.
Yeah.
You know, like I care about recognition.
Well,
by
speak to that, because what was
people.
because we had this conversation. What was speak to your perspective on what, on like the quote unquote normal of what money represented, because I always had a very different perspective. Like I only cared about money because I saw it as a resource. You know what I mean? And it's funny, like we always talk about like now the notion of like playing ball, and how because the numbers are astronomical and so much social media, so much is accessible, the conversation is so much around the money.
Wealth, yeah.
That, and we loved particular football players or just guys who were ballers. Like, we had no idea. And I guess it was still public. We still could have found out how much they made, but it just wasn't as accessible, and we didn't care. So because it probably wasn't as accessible, we didn't care. It wasn't valued as much in society. We weren't hearing about it as much. And the conversation has very much changed. They were just dope. So I would look at aspects and be like, yo, they're beat. Like, and in what they did, then finding out like training methodologies or just ideas of like what they did, it was like, everybody's doing the same thing. Right. So it was like, the
baddest motherfuckers are doing the hardest shit.
Exactly. So everybody that wants to be bad is willing to do some shit. And there's always a less, the closer you get to the pyramid, the top of the pyramid, there's always just less people willing to do that. I just wanted to do that. And then I just knew that I wanted to be able to do things. I want to be able to see things, and I want to be able to experience things. And I always like, once it got to a point where I saw the professional as like an option, it was like, this could actually make me money. But the more important thing is that I'd be great at it. If I'm great at it, it's going to make me money. So cool. I'm just like win-win situation for me. And it wasn't around, but it was never around like making the money from an initial aspect. It just literally became a result of the space that I happened to be in. It was like, if it was something else, if I didn't play football, I still would have wanted to be able to travel. I still would have wanted to be able to do all these things. I would have figured out something else. You know what I mean? When I worked, like if I was like a ship dock, you know what I mean? Like whatever it may be. So, just being.
I think that's part of. I mean, that was part of it too, right? Like I always figured out how to do the things that I wanted to do. I literally did not know that I was graduating high school till the day before graduation,
I remember
and
that.
still got a full academic scholarship to college.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "What?" It's like, because in my mind, I'm like, also the other thing is like, I really was like, it's not real. Like this is a game. Like this is just magic. Just like you literally can manipulate all of this however you want. I don't have to play by the rules that you.
Manipulation is a really interesting thing. It's just like it means nothing. It's like an empty box to the intention of what you do, what you do with it. That's where the only thing you give. Like that's what it looks.
So for me, it was like I did always feel like, there's so many of the things that everyone is aspiring to have through money that I will have way before them and have access to way before them without doing any of that shit. So I was like,
I've told you that a couple times. Like, never forget. I'm like, dude, your lifestyle can be reinforced and over-reinforced by who you are. Not by what, you know what I mean? Like that's not your lifestyle has never been about like what you have to get what you have. No, it's who you are.
So no one would ever believe.
It's who you are to get what you have, not what you have to. You know what I mean? It's like
no one would ever believe my like life resume.
Yeah.
Like if they
I
talk
know.
that, they'd be like, you're absolutely full of shit. And I'd be like, no, it definitely sounds like it's full of shit. Like yo, D from Oxymorons hit me the other day, a few days, it was maybe it was a couple months ago. He hit me and he was like, he's like, son, he's like, I'm starting to think that you actually are like the Black James Bond or some shit. He was like, it's the craziest thing. It's like, I'll see you in the most random photos with the most random people. And he's like in the background of some shit. And he's like, nah, no, now this dude got me tripping. Like, what is going on? And I realized like that it's like, because I, want to be useful and want to be valuable in people, and the things that I've touched on in so many different areas become valuable to other people on their mission.
Yeah, later on down the road, it's like, they
whatever.
might not even have known. And like, I didn't even know that Netic was into this. And it's like, I was into that 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Part of your own. But that's
I know,
what
it's
happens.
like when people try to talk to me about being vegan now, I'm like, I feel you, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm with you, man. Like, or they're like, yo, my green drink, like this chlorophyll drink. I'm like,
I wish you. I remember
those
wheatgrass. I remember those wheatgrass shots.
dude,
Terrible.
I had algae when you literally was not even allowed to like ship from like where there was no packaging on algae. It was coming in like a green plastic bag.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and it was like algae was storing in my grandmother's refrigerator, drinking fucking blue-green algae. Or Dr. Sebi, Dr. Valentine, and these people that David Icke, these individuals that are like massive now because of what they were doing. I'm like, yo, these are the people that I was checking for when I was 14, 15 years old. And they were in my life. Like, I studied William Cooper, who wrote Behold a Pale Horse. I talked to after 9/11. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was a person that I could pick up the phone and call his house, like, and reach and talk to, call his radio show and talk to him, and like, and reach, and we had like, these are people that. So when people are talking about like this whole thing, like when 9/11 happened, I was like, it was super early. I'm like, oh, we did that. It wasn't even like there was no conspiracy theory documentaries or videos. It was just like, I just saw what happened. I'm like, oh, that's us. We did that. This doesn't make any sense. None of this makes sense. We did this.
It went down a little differently than what I thought. I thought the fighter jets were going to shoot them up.
You thought it was about to be war in the streets?
I thought they were going to shoot up. I thought they were going to, next thing you saw was going to shoot up.
I mean, even that when that happened, I was in college when that happened, and I was in a political science course, and they were trying to make us watch a documentary about
while it happened or in the middle.
While it was happening, and I went to class, and everyone's like, before the second tower got hit, I'm in class, and I'm like, wait, what? What are you doing? Oh, I thought you brought this TV in here for the news. I'm like, oh, I'm out. And the teacher got super furious. I'm like, oh, I'm like packing my shit. I thought we were like gonna watch that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm out. And she was like, you can't leave. Like, we're probably gonna go on lockdown soon. I'm like, yo, what are you doing? What are you talking about? This is happening in real time. In 10 years, students are gonna be watching documentaries about this happening.
Yeah.
And you want us to be in here. You're the political science teacher. I'm like, I can't fuck with you. You're an idiot. I gotta go. I'm out. And I was out. You know what I'm saying? And I had to meet with the president and all that shit. And they told us we couldn't leave campus.
Ridiculous. What do you mean?
I had all that shit. I had a gas mask on campus. I had my bug out bag ready. I was like, I'm out. Fuck y'all. I'm out. So I think, there's, I guess for me, it's always been a version of that where I'm like, I can achieve these things from a different path and from a different space, and I don't have to go that way. And I mean, I remember you also saying like, yo, maybe you're never supposed to like work or have a job or do any of those things. Like maybe your job is to literally just share all that you've experienced, and people will just figure out how to like,
Yeah, and I think that
Osho you in some way, shape, or form.
No, that's it. Like I said, it's always been, reinforce your lifestyle by who you are, and just be. If you really believe like, this is who you are, then you're gonna vibrate at a point that people fuck with you, and that's what it is, and that's who you are, and staying true. Like I think that checking in is always like, moments of frustration where we forget or get frustrated. You know what I mean? We have these like we
start playing a different role or playing a different game.
It's like, that's cool. Just be honest around, be mindful of what role you're playing. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's value in it all. Like at this point in time, there's no judgment in it. You know what I mean? It's just like, You're honest, like, yo, this is the role I want to play right now. So you educating yourself about whatever it is, even if it's about finances. It's because it's like, all right, cool, I want to play this role. I'm like, yo, okay. Now you understand, you have a great baseline of the other roles and everything like that. So understanding what comes along with that and stuff like that.
It's that's sort of, those have always been like, without knowing anything about finances, right? Like we always go to this thing where everyone's like, oh, buy gold now.
Yeah.
I'm like, but
no, but you've had you have an intrinsic understanding of that. I think, to me, when it comes to, if there's a term for reference point that we can use, there's an intrinsic understanding that we say wisdom. It's just this intrinsic understanding. It doesn't mean that in regards to the literal aspect of what you're talking, that you're going to do it, but you have an understanding, like almost prophetic. So so much of what you've walked and done has been very prophetic in so many other people's process. And more, you are prophetic so other people can find profit. You've been a prophet so that other people can find profit.
Yeah, find their profit.
You know what I mean? And in this process, their process. And your process has been, it's all been profit. All been profit. It's literally just constant profit, because you just anything you do, the only thing you do are things that you see profit in.
Right.
Literally. You refuse to actually do things that you don't see profit in. And yes, in society, that becomes frustrating to individuals, even to loved ones sometimes and everything like that. But literally, I will always say, my bro only does something if he sees value in it. And sometimes that value is years. And I mean, I'm talking in regards to people, in regards to ideas, in regards to things or whatever. But with that notion, the one thing you do know is that he's going to always be prophetic in what he does. There's going to be, because he's only getting value. I just you are the ultimate trim the fat. You know what I mean? Like trim the fat, trim the fat, trim the fat, trim the fat, trim the fat. So what you're gonna get?
Yeah, also super early though.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. It is what it is. That's part of the being prophetic. I said people's process. Sometimes it's gonna be early, but you weren't early to jiu-jitsu. From the masses, you were. But guess how many people that you value that were really doing jiu-jitsu? Hence why they're black belts and everything like that. So it's the early.
Even that though, think about that, right? So I talked to jiu-jitsu for me is very much like the guitar was for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know the notion of like.
So it's like
you took
15 years ago.
Yeah, you took a.
I was like, me and Henzo, right? Like it was like Henzo was the guy teaching me jiu-jitsu, right? Like but it was like, I can't do this right now because I've got this band and we're about to go to Europe and I'm touring. And it's like, I can't. And because I feel that pull where I'm like, oh, I can be a fighter very easily. Yeah. But it was almost like which one was going to pop first. Well, the band like got the chance to do a European tour first. So it was like, fuck, I got to do that. So now I can't do this. Yeah. But I was like, I knew that value was there and I was going to revisit it when, so it's like, okay, I couldn't do it in 2003.
I remember you told me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
And I knew what you were doing, and you would tell me like little stories, and when you and Coop would do it, and I was like, oh no, it's dope because we had watched UFC, like we saw that, so we saw that. I literally have always loved.
Yeah, it was like 2003, and I'm like, oh, but I can't do this. It was like, but in 2016 I can do this, or 2015 I can do this. You know what I mean? So that was like sort of get a chance to come back to it, and even then I had to take years off for Mexico project and moving from back and forth that's really it sucks because
it sucks. And I get in moments it sucks, and that's why I check in, and that's why I always want you to there be a space of acknowledgement of values and priorities and roles, because when we forget that, sometimes that's where the frustration happens. Like, damn, I really want to be doing this. And it was like, well, why can't you do that? Because you chose to do this. And why did you choose to do this? Boom. Well, then you understand.
No, you're good. Well, you understand why you can't do it. Right.
Stop tripping. So you have always been so prophetic in other people's process. But you have to always understand that your process has always been so profitable. And your profit is, of course, in the fact that you've been able to walk in the manner that so many people truly wish, intrinsically, they wish they could.
Yeah.
And that's why they
that's why they
frustrated. That's why they tried it. Yes, because, you know, the motherfuckers is mad. They wish they could be as honest. They wish they could be as truthful. They wish they, you know what I mean, could be as quote unquote vulnerable in their truths. They could be, you know, because it's like, yo, you're taking the heat. It's like you've been willing to say, nah, yo, I don't give, like you're willing to be yourself and to be vulnerable and to speak your truth.
I think the honesty is a weight that really very few people can carry. It's almost like, you know, if you just like asking a person to be honest is like asking a person to do 1,000 push-ups now. Yeah. It's like what we're living in an environment, society.
Based on what? Yeah, it's
like nothing about.
Give me a base point and then I'll tell you.
Yeah, and what are we talking about? Like, it's just like honesty is not something that's super valued, but I think that intrinsically, people who are honest, even to a fault, I think biologically and chemically, you recognize like that person is strong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now it's almost like whether you not. I remember. The story is a little vulgar. I don't know, but I remember. I remember being in some like dinner party with a bunch of people, and they were just like all the guys around the table with their girlfriends, and everyone was like talking about this. They were talking about like the type of passion that they like and what they want in like a lover and all this shit. And I just remember being like, I don't want none of that shit. Like, I want a girl that makes like insane retarded noises when she like sucks my dick, and like I don't want none of that shit. Like, that shit is whack. Like. And I just remember like, yo, and I was like, and I want a girl that like sees my value. People being like appalled that I sort of said it. Yeah. The baddest girl there that everybody was trying to get at literally gave me her number after and was like, yo, I fuck with you. Like we should hang out. I want to talk to you more. And I was thinking to myself like, and everybody recognized, all those dudes in that moment recognized it as well. Like damn, man, fucking.
I wish I had enough.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
And
what if I had enough in me to?
Because I think, you know, a lot of times.
Well, you know,
that's what.
Usually the truth, the reason why people are scared of the truth because of the fear of the consequence that comes along with that truth. It's a lot of times not real, or even if it is real, like they don't feel that they're strong enough to deal with the consequence that comes along with that truth.
I mean, truth is.
I can definitely speak for myself.
Truth is an armor, though, right? So it's like, here's the thing.
It's only armor if you feel. It's almost. Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I also think in the moments where I haven't been truthful, it's only armor based upon perspective. You know what I mean? Like people immediately feel less than. Everything is what you believe. Whatever you tell yourself, that shit is real, man. You're right. You tell yourself that shit is strength. It's a strength. You tell yourself that it's not. And I think that in that moment, for most people, because if you go back,
well, because have a desired outcome.
It's right. Like, well, then, yeah, of course.
Right. I guess that's part of it, though, right? Like, if you have a desired outcome that looks a particular way, and you think you're charting your course that way towards that outcome.
Yeah. If you wanted to fit society standards, it would have been in your best interest.
Yeah,
to lie and lie. You know what I mean? So,
it's like, yo, psychopaths.
So it's like, yeah, of course.
I probably like.
This is why literally fucking politicians I watch, and I'm like, this shit is all ridiculous. Who can watch this and take this shit serious? Because nobody fucking tells the truth, literally, and nobody answers it.
Or follows up, and you're like, what are you talking about? How can Kamala Harris 3 months ago say that I believe Joe Biden's accusers, I believe all of Joe Biden's accusers, and then be on stage hugging Joe Biden? Yo, the illest shit she could have done was punch him in the face.
Yeah, she could have said, nah, fuck that. You know what? Nah, I'm not. Or she could have said, you know what? Listen, I understand the greater good is we're fighting Trump. If that's the belief that we're fighting Trump, then before I even agree to do any of this shit, we need to address this, Joe. Yo, that would have been so dope.
Everyone you off rip. You can't, but that's what I'm saying. They can't be real.
Her, doesn't matter.
That's because they're dumb. They don't. Everybody, everybody dumb. Like, no, I think it's. Mom told me specifically, do not say that everybody dumb.
Sorry,
she was
Mom.
Like, don't.
Sorry,
she was like, don't destroy everyone.
It's a good shirt. Everybody's dumb. We
I think that there really is no consequence to truth in in any sort of way, shape, or form, because the outcome of telling the truth gets you closer to the individuals who truly accept you, gets you closer to the space where you're truly who you are, right? And like that famous Thelonious Monk quote, like, the genius is the person that's most like themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, well, guess what? You'll be most like yourself around people who are accepting of who you are.
It's like,
because you'll never have a mask on, or you'll very rarely have a mask on, because you're not appealing to anyone.
Yeah.
It's like, but the people who are around you, because they have accepted, like, oh, this motherfucker is wild. So for me, it's like, yo, I'd rather be around 4 people that fuck with me 100% than be around 400 people that fuck with me that
don't even really know me, because they're not fucking with me, because they don't even know who I am.
I'm wearing a mask. Yeah. But it's like, look, if I got 4 people that fuck with me 100%, then that's better than having 39 people that 399 people that fuck with me 1%.
Yeah, your baseline is very different.
Right? Because now I'm like, I got 400%, which is better than your 399%.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck that you got 399% of people that fuck with you 1%.
1%
I got 4 people that fuck with me
1% of you.
So all I need to do is like increase this to
absolutely.
fucking 5 people at 100%, and now I'm 101% greater than you.
And foundationally, your people come and go.
And
those 400 people can fucking, because it's not based upon anything, and it's not even based upon you. So if you happen to
actually show up that day as who you are,
up, they're like, who the fuck is this? I'm out of here.
Right. So they're transient.
Welcome to LA. Welcome to Los Angeles. Yes. So, no, that's
a certain section of LA, because there's some real motherfuckers.
Yeah. Welcome to the idea of LA.
Yeah. Hollywood. Welcome to Hollywood.
Industry.
So we don't got no we got no problems with the real ones.
What do we can kind of wrap up. We're gonna be out here forever, but we do have things to do. But I ask people this just to give them relatability and everything like that. What in your world, in regards to your process, do you feel that you're at a fork in the road right now, trying to like figure out, okay, which way I want to go? And what in your world do you feel like you see the path and you know, like, boom, I'm in this, and this is right now, for as long as possible with Netic, is a part of your, like, I'm prophesizing this path, and I know it's a little mainstay,
I think it's pretty clear for me right now in terms of where the fork in the road is. It's where we are politically, like geopolitically.
Mm-hmm.
Do what's my investment strategy of financially?
Mm-hmm.
Am I investing in spaces, because through the design, and I've lived many lives, and now being like design and real estate and these things that I really enjoy and love. How am I investing? What am I investing in? And what does the real estate investments sort of look like? Are they tangible here? Are they here? Are they elsewhere? I really, truly love New Zealand. There's something very, very special and magical about that space. And I think that it's important that I spend more time there. And I think it's important that start setting up some sort of foundational roots there for the tribe, besides our tribe that's there, for our tribe here. So I think about that in terms of a fork road. Like, okay, how much time and energy can I allocate to that, to New Zealand, Mexico, versus here in America, right? Like, do we actually buy a farm in America while buying real estate investments that will keep the farm sustainable and paid for? Like, because I don't think everyone is gonna go to New Zealand if need be, or shit hits the fan. It's like, so where are shit hits the fan options? And that's basically where I'm at right now, where the fork in the road is like, I think that they're all equally valuable, and there are 3 different things: investment properties, farmland, and then out of country properties. So those are three completely different things that I am having sort of a fight with. And obviously I'm super super blessed to have the support system that I have in you, in terms of allowing me to think things through in a way that, if I see a property that's out of my price range, you know what I'm saying? Which is,
it's not out of your thought range.
It's not right. It's not out of my thought range because I'm thinking about the tribe, and I know that there's a financial end to our tribe that, like, I personally don't care if I sent all my money to you. You know what I mean? Like, I literally, if I was just like, I could actually direct deposit all of my checks to you, it wouldn't mean anything to me. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, because I know that actually is the space. So when I have an idea about something financial and I bring it to you and you execute on it, and you literally execute on it in a way that's like 100x how I've executed on it. Like, and that's happened so many times where I'm like, yo, this is a good idea.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. There have been times when I told him to do something very specific and he had not done it.
That's
and
okay,
I'm like,
though, because it's not
didn't
part
matter.
of my
The things that he did, it wasn't his process. But I also didn't articulate it enough in a way when Ryan's like, well, if it's so good of an idea, you do it. Why aren't you doing it? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, good point. Because I don't like the minutia of what it takes to actually do it. But when Ryan got his contract, this is one of my favorite points. There's two positions. Ryan got his contract. He said, well, it's official. I'm a millionaire. What should I do? What should I buy? And I said, buy gold, buy Apple. Those are the two things that I said. There was no iPhone when that happened. We were on our Blackberries.
I think I remember one of the girls I was dating. She said to buy Apple too.
Yeah, and then there was one more thing.
She was inside trading.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She was. Yeah.
There was one more thing that when the market crashed in 2008.
That was when I got my deal. That was it. AIG.
In 2008, right? AIG.
You said to invest in AIG. I
said, yo, AIG is 86. It's like 86 cents.
Yeah, and you were like, yo, there's no way they're gonna let that fail.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I was like, yo, buy.
Even my financial advisor was like, you were right. He said he told you right. He was like, yeah, you were right about the gold thing, and I think he's right about AIG. I remember that.
Yeah, that's like AIG, and I just was, but it was from my understanding of the fragility of society.
Yeah, and you were like, it just doesn't make sense. They're not gonna allow that. It's too much a part of everything that they're gonna bail it out.
Even if they have to if they have to falsely propagate it up to seem like they know what they're doing, that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
So, like, if they're announcing a bailout and this is what they're bailing out, invest in that, because they're deeply embedded in the illusion of stability.
Which when you see the illusion, it makes it always be like, this is so stupid. They're doing things that don't make sense to keep the illusion of what they're doing like it makes sense. It's so weird. That's how dumb.
Yeah, I think that's the fork for me right now. Is making sure that I'm like being smart with the little bit of money that I have and rolling it out. And like, I do have great people. It's funny. I have amazing business people who I actually advise all the time, and they're like, call me, and I'm like, this is so dumb. Why are you calling me? Like, I don't. And they're like, no, because you can look at it from a neutral place, because you don't have the same skin in the game in that way. So you're looking at. So the reason I'm coming to you is because you're looking at it from a neutral place. Like, you don't actually care in the same ways that I care. So I get that from that place, but it definitely makes me feel like I'm like, oh, I probably should literally just be giving these people like my paper. But now
just write them invoices.
I should also be invoicing everybody every phone call. Yeah. It's just the other thing is like I genuinely don't know how to do that.
An assistant and see how fast they'll be willing to get on the books. Oh, my assistant will call you back. Netic's assistant will call you back. See how fast they're like, well, I need his time. Retainer.
My assistant will have a very Jewish name.
They'll put you on retainer.
Y'all gonna come for me like Nick? I got. Cause I got.
I wouldn't come for you. This is my show.
for allowing me to say such a thing. Oh my God.
What? Okay, so what do we got in regards?
You're not gonna come. Don't come for me because my Jewish family is gonna step up and make you embarrass yourselves.
What in regards to the prophetic aspect? Like, where do you feel like you're in a path? Like, you feel really good about what you're doing, and you foresee this. Like, yo, I got this. I know I'm laying down the actual path consciously, and I'm with intention laying down the path, and you see it.
Oh, Mexico will get built.
There you go.
Mexico will get built and it'll be super fly. And if you're working if we're working towards New Zealand in the capacity,
if you want a label where the what was my man Suge said?
Oh yeah.
If you want to go somewhere and deal with some dudes who you don't
Dancing
gotta worry
in
about
the
you
video.
don't gotta worry about the bosses dancing all up in the video. You don't gotta worry about none of that. You got bosses that are gonna be designing fly shit and building houses. You need to come fuck with us. Fuck with Green Song.
Exactly.
That's our Mexico company. Our company down in Mexico, Green Song, and that has to do with our value of nature and being one and being in tune with.
That's our company, or what is it about Nature's Whisper?
Oh, Green Song is
our company.
It's our
Nature's
company.
Whisper.
Nature's Whisper is the company in Mexico.
Green Song is our company on a global. It's global.
Global, yeah. And Nature's Whisper is the actual Mexico company, but it's around being in tune with the Green Song. The song
Actually,
of
bleep
nature.
all that out. Don't even tell them.
Nah, they gonna know.
Nah,
they don't know when we're
know.
doing this. This is at some point in time.
Yeah, but I don't even want them to know the name of the company.
Okay.
It's like it's just
do that. That would be dope. Just do that. Beep, 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 beep. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to name the name of nothing.
But anyway.
Yeah, so I genuinely believe that, and the reason why I can say that is not based on me. It's based on the support system around me, right? So if I have to rise to the occasion for you, and rise to the occasion, and for the fam, I will do that. You know what I'm saying? Like if I have to stick in something that I don't want to be in for you, I will do that. So because Mexico is like our tribal investment, Mexico will get done. Yeah. New Zealand is our tribal investment. New Zealand will get done. Like, if I'm buying a house for me to be a, sober living facility or an investment property or something like that, make it done.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Right? Because it depends on who else I have like around me in terms of that, right? Like having Cleo involved like helps, you know what I'm saying? Like, but if it was just for me, it's like I would not be sitting here so confidently like, oh no, so you need me.
That's why I think that for you truly are you're a consultant. You've consulted for so many people. You know what I mean? I see you as like a consultant for so many people because so many people who are valued see value in you. And it's like, yeah. So bring him, and this is why I said you can literally just write your ticket. Because at some point in time, they will. Like people, I'm like, yo, you can just clearly write your ticket, and that's part of the truth of like being willing to step into that and say like, nah, yo, for somebody I've given all this for free, I'm not giving it for free anymore. And it's almost like making them show and prove, and they would all say, yep, you're right, okay. And even in like some people might fall off, but some people would be like, nah, okay, I will. And what that does is, in a different space, it would validate, it would give the people who need validation from that space, like, well, if you ain't getting paid, then you ain't legit. It's like, no, that's not true.
The book gang is another thing that's super consistent.
Yeah.
The podcast, I think, seeing this with that it's one of those things, like I'm being very strategic about the things like, okay, I can do the book gang consistently and
timing wise, and I think it's really good. You know me, I'm all big about recognizing how much time you have in a particular space.
So it's like these are things where I'm like, okay, one day a week I could do this book gang thing.
Yeah.
I'm watching you with the podcast, like, let him build that. Let him build the whole thing so that there's a blueprint that I don't have to create, and I can come behind and sort of like, perfect.
Nah,
like,
easy. You think so we talked about planning on doing this like once a month or something like that, just in like a collective consciousness podcast, just to kind of check in on what's going on, whether it be personally, individually, society, like whatever it may be, energetically. One quick thing I just want to wrap up on with a question in the space that you've been, you've always been my big brother. And what do you see? Older brother. You always been my older brother.
I've been your older brother. I haven't been your big brother for a long time.
What has your physical age given you in value? Like, where do you see the profit in the fact that now the space that you're in, you are 40 plus, and nobody knows that. A lot of people know it, and they're like, "What?" And they forget, and it throws them off. But being that, how has that been a blessing in regards to, like, what value have you taken from that? Where have you been like, "Yo, these are jewels from your physical age that have given you," whether it's in perspective, whether it's in, like, yo, how you use your body differently, like.
Well, I mean, one, I genuinely do not care about the things that I genuinely do not care about a lot of the things that I cared about.
Yeah.
When you're younger.
Yeah.
It's just like you realize like it actually doesn't matter. And this is coming from a person who didn't care about a lot of things that people cared about when they were younger. I was just like, it does not matter. You know, like so many things that people, like that I think most people cared about, I just genuinely never cared about.
Yeah.
And now it's even less. It's even less. I think what the other thing is that comes along with it is just sort of the mental, they say like, older people could become endurance athletes.
Yeah.
Are more likely to become like high level endurance athletes. I totally understand where that comes from, because you know that you actually can get through things physically, right? Because you've probably done it more times than they have.
Yeah.
So you've got that on your side.
Because you've been through.
Right.
You've actually gone through.
Right. But then also the other thing is that it's like your mind over matter, you already know that you're operating from a deficiency in the physical.
Yeah.
Right? In a certain way, shape, or form. So your mind is where you're relying on.
That's where your baseline is. Like,
so you're like, oh, I'm just going to keep pushing. Like, and also, I think there's also a quality of life thing where you realize, well, at least for me, it's like, I think it's the opposite of what, like when people are saying, like when you're young, you're sort of like wild and dumb because you don't, like you don't think about your life. You think you'll live forever.
Yeah.
It's like, I am the opposite. It's like, I know that I'm actually going to physically die at a certain time. So I'm like, do more shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, do more, go further, be stronger.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea that I can only get into I can only get into like Valhalla. You know what I'm saying? Like, and
yeah, it's like
not to steal their narrative.
I'm building my resume. Like,
right.
I'm just trying to like. That's it's the notion
I can only do that if I die on the battlefield.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, that's like the finite aspect of the physical is the motivation. It's like, what? Of course, this is why I have to go hard and just keep building because it's finite. It's like, what are you talking about? I only have a certain amount of time to do like just keep doing. It's not around like the idea of like, oh, I don't think. It's like, no, I can just do it. No, it's like,
I just want to get a little rest and relaxation. I'm like, for what?
Yo, you're gonna get that in any other.
like why?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, like it's, I don't know. There's a I want to sort of, if I can, end on this idea, and I don't really know the exact quote, but I like this general idea that hard times create good men, or hard times create hard men, hard men create good times create weak men create hard times. And I don't know if that's the exact quote, but it's around that idea. The idea that we shouldn't want things to necessarily just be easy, because what comes as a result of things being easy isn't much growth. So when we're looking for like the escapism from the Trump era, it's like, that's not going to be what you actually, we don't want what's on the other end of that. Just like the reason why we're seeing so many of the repercussions and so much of racism was allowed to survive in America to the point that it did was because slaves didn't free themselves. They were freed.
Yeah.
And because they were freed, there was no consequences. There was no literal, actual physical deaths and murder of people who like were
did the
enslaved.
shit, yeah.
So that shit could live for a long time because they took the easy path, the path of least resistance, allowed.
They killed enough people to be like, yo, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm not trying
It's never worth it.
It would never.
That's not worth
I'm
it.
not trying to worth being.
And
like,
people always say like, yo, if
no, I'm with it.
the numbers, if you look at it mathematically, generations have a lot very quickly. Within 30 generations, you have over 2 billion. You have over 2 billion, or 31 generations. You have over 2 billion direct descendants, right? So like obviously, we have 2 parents. We have 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, 16 great great grandparents. So within 30 generations, you're talking about over a billion, well over a billion people that you are direct descendants of. So if you have to sacrifice a bunch, even if you had to sacrifice 80% of your, if you had to sacrifice 80% of your fucking species to make that species strong and be able to reproduce in an environment that actually serves that species, it's well worth it because within 30 generations, there's going to be a billion of them
again,
and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But if you're so worried about your fucking right now and your comfort level right now, you're never going to do shit within this moment that you have.
But you know, people, that's
to make it better. So you're literally, the reason that we're in that we're in is because our parents took the fucking easy road, and our grandparents took the fucking easy road, and the great grandparents took the fucking easy road, and we're looking for comfort, and all that shit allowed us to survive. And every once in a while, we have a generation that's like comes around and kicks somebody's fucking teeth down their throat, and is like, I don't give a fuck, I'm gonna stomp a mud hole in your ass. And then guess what? That family bloodline doesn't live on. Or that family learns its lesson and is like, yo, do not do that shit. And they get scared and they start becoming more timid and they don't fucking cross that line anymore. We need to draw real clear lines in the sand. Like, yo.
Values and priorities.
Where we are is a result. Where we are is a result of us. You know, it's a result of everything, obviously.
Yeah.
All things that have ever happened over the course of forever got us here. But when we start talking about like this sort of geopolitical space that we're in, where we literally need to say out loud, Black Lives Matter, which is a silly statement to begin with because no lives really matter, like over the course of a long enough period of time. And ultimately, if you have to tell someone your life
matters,
your life matters,
it's fucking absurd to me.
You're talking to the wrong person because your life does not have to matter to a person. There's nowhere in the world, in the nature's handbook, that your life has to fucking matter to anyone. I don't give a fuck what's in my neighbors. I barely think about my fucking neighbors. Right? Like, I don't, let alone like everyone's life. It's just nonsense. And we do this from a space where, because we want comfort, we want creature comforts, and we're virtual signaling because we want to be seen in a particular way and because we'd like to feel a particular way. But I'm arguing that we would get closer to that feeling that we're looking for if we do the hard shit, if we go through the hard shit. So if we go through 4 more years of open racism where Trump is empowering racists to be who they are and show themselves, then we can actually get it on. But if I don't know who the fuck I'm fighting, and I don't know who the fuck
It's all based in deception.
Right? And if I'm being deceived by the people who I think have my back, but they're literally the ones who Biden designed the fucking crime bill, and then Kamala Harris enforced the crime bill to put our people in fucking jail, and we're arguing for these individuals. It's like, yo, y'all all dumb. Everybody dumb. Like, and I can't fuck with none of y'all. Like, I gotta go.
Yeah, no,
lock and load. Like, cause any one of y'all could be the fucking, could be the enemy.
Yeah.
In your ignorance. And so I think that, I just arguing for like more time under pressure, because I'm interested to see what happens. I don't want to lift the lid off the pot because it's bubbling and shaking. I want the pot to explode.
If you recognize that, I'm with it. I understand.
Well, I know you understand because we've been preparing for it. But
yeah, I understand. Also, I get it.
But I just think there's much more growth in that than just the niceties.
There's more value in that long term. You know what I mean? And I think that, we've been able to always, for the most part, look at more of a wider, longer, more macro vantage point than most people. because their foundation, it's hard when people are, when people don't trust that they can
the micro is the macro too, though.
I know, but when people don't trust that they can walk a mile, every step is like, oh shit. So they're worried about how they look every step, how they're going to do every step. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the next step. It's like, I'm not going to run a mile. I'm going to run a mile. So I'm not worried about the first step. I'm good. First step, oh shit, that's a little terrain. It's like what we're looking at is very different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're comfortable in the terrain because we trust that no matter what, because we feel like we've done certain training, and even we feel like, we have enough supporting cats and we have enough in ourselves to believe that we'll see whatever blind spots we do have, we'll be okay.
Well, I don't know. I there's a little pushback in that, right? Because a lot of times our strengths also tend to be our weaknesses. A lot of times we are relying on our physical capabilities and our intellectual capabilities, which then make us sort of risk. We're not risk adverse.
That's all. But what I'm saying is that all the same. So not necessarily in regards to saying that our blind spots will be filled by us. This is why you reach out to people that are in very different spaces. This is why you reach out
by
to
the tribe in
yes,
general, right?
By who we are. When I mean us, I mean like our tribe. This is why we step into so many different realms, and we have a wide variety of friends, a wide variety of people. I spoke to Mom about this. Like the people that you brought us around were all very different people, like just in general, very different. And it's because we recognize we have blind spots. We're interested in blind spots, and we do. We recognize that at the end of the day, our blind spots could be our detriment, and so we're trying to like cover our, cover our bases as much as
mitigate that.
Exactly, try to cover our bases as much as possible, and be like, okay, cool, we don't know. And also, I said that there's an honesty in regards to valuing the quote unquote spiritual and spirit aspect, and recognizing that this flesh world has value because it has value, and we see the value in it. But seeing the macro, it's like, okay, there's another side to it. So fuck it, maybe this is just part of the process. And if you recognize that when you see the whole mass extinction level stuff, it's like maybe this is what happens, and maybe this is it. And so my attachment to like, it's like, look what happened in Beirut. Look what happens all the time. Nobody says shit. Look what happens years ago. What happened in Indonesia? Look what all the shit that happens in the Philippines. Like these massive things that have happened that have destroyed. You know what I mean? That literally within a couple days, I feel like because it's like we have this now even more because of the internet and everything like that so fast. It's like the real impactful shit doesn't even really impact people because it's the next week or 2 days you're gonna hear about something else, or it's just the next thing, whatever, the next big thing. So, yeah, I honestly, this is why I trust, because we're going to continue to do that. This is just who we are. We're going to continue to step in these spaces of interest and of where we feel like we have holes and, desires. And some of it, we dance back and forth between the desires of like, yo, this is interesting and cool to me, and like, oh, this is important. We see this as like important. And a lot of times the shit that we find interesting and cool, we can articulate why it's important. Right. So it goes back and forth. That's it, man. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man. Solid,
I think,
bro.
man, I really appreciate it, and I voice it often, but, you are tremendously valuable to me. And, I can't thank you enough in regards to who you are to me, what you do for me, and being able to share space with you on a continued basis and laugh with you. We didn't really talk about too much about our humor. Oh yeah. So we'll do a whole nother one about that, how funny we are. But
we're hilarious.
We are.
If you didn't already notice, we are hilarious.
But for real, man, this has been dope. We winged this whole thing, so
yeah, we did completely wing it. No,
nothing. There was no
we didn't have to.
And give no questions, no nothing. But
you didn't write nothing down.
I figured we'd be able to work it out, man.
I was like, in case you said something that was poignant, I figured I'd bring my book, but you didn't, so I didn't write anything.
Nothing of importance, like, no new thoughts.
I was like, oh, God,
we've actually had this conversation numerous times over and over
again. Yeah, this is a feedback loop. The one thing I did forget to say, though, is that nature, right? Like, so for me...
And this is also his thing around getting the last word in, but go ahead, finish.
No, I want to make sure that I'm right all the time. We were talking about process because we went all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, my process... I've also been spending a lot more time back in nature.
Dope.
So that sort of like is a really nice decompression space. a lot more hiking, you know, and looking forward to a lot more camping. But that also is part of like that grounding.
Like
is actually touching the ground.
No, absolutely, yeah.
You know, and being in the ground and being in nature and, you know, being alone, and not so much alone, but just being human in the world. You know that.
It puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
It definitely allows. I get it.
Strengthening your eyes.
I don't even want to. Fuck. I need that.
That's more that sort of like, you know, reptilian brain, mammalian brain shit, because like you really only use it in nature.
You only have to. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in your
exactly. And you do what's
technological
in a
brain.
space to everything's around comfort. There's a difference between like making your space comfortable than being out in space and finding comfort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it takes time to change the relationship from being in nature to being nature.
Yeah.
So you gotta remember that. All right. I love you, bro. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And we're out.